这句最开始可能没有多少人觉得我们能走到这一步，不过 HK 已经完全不一样了，因为我们成长了。4强不是我们该停下来的地方。
闪电狼是 OPC 第1季的冠军，第2季我们也没打算改变这一点。这次每一个对手都是场硬仗，不过闪电狼会把冠军留在台湾。
OPC 참가팀들 정말 대단합니다. 꿈은 꿀 수 있겠죠. 그러나 우리에게 이기는 일은 매번 당연합니다. 이게 현실이에요.
That is correct, ladies and gentlemen. It is, of course, OPC Season 2 playoffs time. I'm your host, Kevin AVRL Walker, joined with me this evening, Matt, Pixie, Carol, and we are now at the final stages of OPC.
We have our 4 teams, and you met them just a moment ago. Their journey's here, and what is on the line for each and every one of them. But really, everything that came before doesn't matter anymore. It all comes down to this.
It's been a long 6 weeks, a massive journey for every single team involved so far, from all origins, different countries represented even within teams, upsets, new rivals made, new victories had as well. We finally made it to that fated top 4.
The return of the winners and runners-up from Season 1, plus a few new teams. And, it's worth saying, some notable exceptions as well. Certainly, Season 2 has lived up to, and I think exceeded, everyone's expectations in terms of the stories of these teams, the caliber of gameplay. And we haven't even seen the first game, but this will be a fitting playoffs.
The stage is set here as we wait for the teams to arrive. As I said before, the final 4 teams, the crowd is packed at the Blizzard E Stadium in Taipei. Setting the stage now once again for the best of the Pacific region, the best of every single team we've seen across all 6 weeks. This is going to be a monumental finish.
I'm going to say it as well, a monumental start. I don't know about you, but I'm hyped. This is everything I never knew I wanted.
This is everything I hoped for and more.
And you can see what they are fighting for there on the stage, live at the Blizzard East Stadium in Taipei. That is the cup. The Flash Wolves have to put it back up there so that maybe someone can take it off them, or maybe they get to take it home again. By the end of this weekend, we will have our answer.
Yeah, and who knows as well, you know, it's still not entirely clear yet exactly what the result of this weekend will be. I think you can be quite safe to say here that one of the two teams we're going to see today, that team being Ardeont, is very favored. But still, the future isn't exactly certain yet because Flash Wolves are entering this playoffs as defending champions. Blank are looking like they're better than ever. Hong Kong Attitude have had a great run overall this season.
And of course, putting that cup back up is the returning champions themselves, the Flash Wolves. And that's the thing, yeah. It's just so impossible to say what will happen. But let's meet the first of our two teams.
Blank Esports from Australia coming in as seed number 4 into the playoffs. The second place team from Season 1 now, looking to make that Grand Finals appearance once again in our OPC playoffs.
And their road to get here was rocky to say the least, especially for returning runners-up, but when it counted, they delivered, making it in that 4th place seed.
All members of Blank here, including coaches.
They look ready to go. I don't know about you.
They, you know, carry the chant over from the World Cup as well. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie.
Who was from New Zealand. Let's take a look at their opponents, though. The absolute favorites coming into this playoffs. No two ways about it. Ardeont coming in from Korea, the remnants of mighty AOD. Picking up some new superstar players as well. Coming in looking absolutely dominant from even their performance in the promotion tournament into the 6 weeks of regular season play to drop no matches on their paths to the playoffs.
Entering as the number 1 seed into this playoff semi-final as well. The team arguably most deserving to be here, the best result. I mean, this was an expected arrival for this team. Before we're going to get into this match though, I have a couple words from both sides. Doctor from Blank, Jeff from Ardeont.
Before the match, what do you want to say?
It's been a really hard-fought journey making it here today, making it through on our final match of the regular season. We've been looking forward to this match all week, ready to play them once again, and we're looking to give them another series that'll keep them up at night once again.
OK， Doctor 是说他们是经历了非常艰难的一场旅程，尤其是上个礼拜的比赛，才能够站在今天这个舞台上。那当然呢，上一次碰上 ART 的时候，好像呢差一点点让他们做噩梦。但是没关系，今天真的会让他们做噩梦，没有办法有好的結果了。看起來火藥味是蠻濃厚的。OK，What about you？
현장까지 이제 시간 내 가지고 돈 써가면서 와주신 팬들께 너무 감사드리고요. 와주신 만큼 결과로 보답해드리겠습니다. 감사합니다.
好，迫不及待坐入我们选手席的 Jeb 是说，他今天真的非常感谢到场支持
very, very thankful
所有的粉丝
for all of
们
Ardeont
待会呢
fans.
他们就会以最好的表现来回报
We're
给大
going
家。
to show
再次
our
感谢
very
到
best
现场
performance here to
支持
pay back
AVRL
all our
的粉丝
fans.
们，掌声给我们的 Jeb 还有
Once again,
Dahmer
thank you to
And
all the
before the end,
Ardeont
please shake hands.
fans for supporting
Okay,
us.
thank you. 感谢双方的代表。
And I think Doctor put it pretty well there.
今天
Blank
比赛
are just
即将就要
looking to give
马上
Ardeont another series to keep them up at night. And arguably the best result of that would be a series that puts Blank through to the finals, right? I mean, what would keep Ardeont up at night more than falling just short of playoffs after having such a dominant season? It would be an intense thing to have happen here.
Yeah, it would be. And to sort of introduce everyone once again to what we can expect for this weekend, let's go into how the playoffs format's going to work here. So tonight, it's going to be Ardeont taking on Blank. Ardeont on the home side as the highest seed, Blank on the away side as the lowest seed. It's going to be a best of 7, the same 5 game modes that you're already used to, with the addition of a 6th map Control and a 7th map Escort. Again, Ardeont as the home team will get every odd numbered map pick that goes from 1, 3, 5, and 7. Blank getting the even number ones, that is the 2nd, the 4th, and the 6th map pick. And then of course tomorrow we're going to have Hong Kong Attitude and Flash Wolves as well in their own semi-final. The loser of both of those matches will go into their own best of 7 on Sunday to play for 3rd and 4th, and the winners will go into the grand finals directly following that 3rd and 4th place match in another best of 7. So Sunday is going to be the hype day, but it all begins now.
That it does, and it's a pretty incredible way to have it all play out, I think. I mean, we kind of touched on it before, but to kind of recap it, you know, you've got the dominant team from the season, you've got the returning champions from season 1 and the runners-up, and then you've got this new entrant in Hong Kong Attitude who fell just short of playoffs in season 1, who for them have finally made it, as it were, and not just made it, actually made it as 3rd seed. So even in terms of the regular season, they managed to displace the 2 teams that were above them coming up into playoffs. And if it weren't for the addition of Ardeont into that mix, kind of giving everyone a run for their money, there would be the argument to be had that Hong Kong Attitude are just directly behind Flash Wolves in terms of the season 1 talent that came in returning.
And to sort of remind everyone of the standings as well, how we actually got to this week and how we made it to the top 4 itself. There it is, 1 through to 4, Ardeont, Flash Wolves, Hong Kong Attitude, and Blank. In 5th place finished AHQ Esports Club, then Mega in 6th, Machi in 7th, and Liblant Supreme in 8th. Of course, this isn't going to be the last time you're going to see AHQ as well, as they'll be heading over to China for the APAC premiere, as well as Flash Wolves and Blank following the conclusion of OPC. But that is the 6-week journey, what was represented there, how we arrived, and there were a lot of different, I guess, storylines that sort of led to here, you know, what started as a very kind of interesting round robin 1 with some unexpected victories from teams, Mega having a slow start into the tournament, then getting to round robin 2, a 3-way tiebreak.
Yeah.
I mean, it was something else.
Exactly, and Doctor mentioned that there as well. Blank actually didn't qualify for this semi-final until their very last game of the competitive season, right? That is how intense and close Season 2 has been. Even in the upper echelons of that area, up until about week 5, it was still technically uncertain that even Flash Wolves would be able to make playoffs. The only team that was secure at that point was Ardeont, and I suppose that makes this quite fitting. You've got the team that, in terms of this playoffs, was the most secure, the earliest, coming up against a team who only guaranteed their spot here on their very last game. Even Hong Kong Attitude had just barely punched their ticket earlier in that same day. I mean, it's just been an incredible run, and the fact that we had that 3-way tie right up towards the final day of gameplay should tell you everything you need to know about how that 6 weeks of tournament went.
We've already seen the players on stage. We've already seen them, I guess, do their own battle chants before they get into the matches themselves. But let's take a closer look at exactly who the members are. Going to start things off with the number 1 seed from Korea, Ardeont. And this is the team that has been on a tear throughout the entire tournament. 14-0 is their match scoreline, or their record rather, throughout the entire season. That comes to 42-2 for map wins versus losses as well. No team comes into this playoffs with standings looking like that.
And this is the team that changed everything, right? I mean, Season 2 was already looking to be a very different season from the get-go. We had brand new teams come in through the promotion tournament. We had a higher caliber of play. We even had things that had begun to develop in the latter half of Season 1 that were just going to kind of continue. Things like the rise of Hong Kong attitude. Things like now the relative decline of Matchy. But you had Ardeont come into that mix as well. Right at the top of everything. Absolutely smacked the whole competition, right? And they've pushed the level up. If anything, they only assisted in the rise of Hong Kong attitude, the fall of Matchy, AHQ just not quite making it, and everything else that's happened, because they came in saying, if you can't play to our standard, you don't deserve to be here.
The other thing about this team to remember is, and it's interesting you mentioned the promotion relegation tournament to even get into Season 2. If you include the wins from there, their actual record is 18-0 for matches, and then 54-2 for maps. And this team also features superstar and rated #1 DPS player in OPC Season 2, Erster, as well, specifically onto the Genji. So, I mean, this is an absolutely star-studded lineup, and their opponents, Blank, coming into this playoffs from Australia into the #4 seed as well, is interesting as competition, because they did have that very close series last we saw.
Yeah, and we'll take a look at the other side of that being, of course, Blank Esports. The runners-up from Season 1 who beat AHQ in what was the equivalent of Season 1. There wasn't a third and fourth entrant into the playoffs. It was simply top 3 in a bubble race. Blank earned their spot in the playoffs, in the finals, in fact, and couldn't quite take it to Flash Wolves, unfortunate as that is to say. Then came back in Season 2, they've made some swap-ups, picking up Huss, picking up Huwu, and to speak to #1 players, Huwu has now earned himself the spot as the #1 tank player in the tournament as well. That means that's above tank players like Republic, tank players like Jongi, exactly, from Flash Wolves. Some really incredible talent that he's displaced, this sort of new face, if you will, to the OPC scene. I mean, people in OCE will recognize this player, and indeed those who tuned into World Cup would have seen him on Team New Zealand, but he's been an unknown quantity as far as this level of tournament is concerned, and he's absolutely delivered. We had this team come in, have to really gel together with this new lineup, while also still trying to keep pace with that incredibly fast pace that Ardeont set with their level of gameplay that they brought in. And again, it's reflected in Blank only getting in to the playoffs in their very last match. It really came down to the wire. But you've got to consider that much like when it came to playoffs in Season 1, when it counted, they delivered up until the grand finals. And now that is the history they have to beat.
All right, let's take a look at the head-to-head match records now. 14-0 is Ardeont's match record. Once again, Blank on the other side is 8 wins to 6 match losses. 2-0 is the head-to-head score. That is 6. That translates rather into 6 wins to 1 loss to 1 draw, which they had in the final meeting in Week 6 as well. You can sort of see how it's spread out between the different game modes: Control, Assault, Escort, into Hybrid, and then the overall win rate between the teams. And it's a lot of Blanks, I guess, losses earlier on, which is coming from that 8-6 Season 2 result, were from other matches earlier on as well.
Yeah, exactly. And there's something really interesting in these stats as well, because they are fairly reflective, I suppose, of the head-to-head between these two teams. But the one thing that these stats can't quite tell you is the fact that Blank have given Ardeont their most competitive series to date. And it seems weird when you look at that, right? 6 wins, 1 loss in terms of the maps between these, and one of them going to a draw. You're like, well, hold on. That means Ardeont only lost 1 map against these guys. How is that the most competitive? It's the most competitive because Ardeont only lost 2 maps in the entirety of the regular season, and one of those was to Blank. Flash Wolves, who took the first map off them, were not able to repeat that performance the second time those teams met. So even when you look at that relative metric, you have to say that if, like, of all of the teams in this playoffs alongside Ardeont, Blank are definitely the ones who have the greatest shot against them, who are going to give them their greatest challenge. We still have to see if Blank can repeat that performance, take a map off Ardeont, take 2 maps off Ardeont, push Ardeont to match point. But one thing I guarantee you is this team will push Ardeont.
And that's the thing about Blank, right? Because when you put it all together and really consider things, no other team has challenged Ardeont this far, and no other team now deserves to play Ardeont in this setting once again. Can Blank take it all the way? Can Blank actually achieve that goal, or is it going to be another Ardeont victory, which would be, again, not unexpected, but certainly you would like to see the full power of Blank unleashed now, because up until now, it doesn't feel like Blank have reached their maximum potential.
And it does feel like it was only in that very last week, indeed day of play, that we started to see what Blank could be. But of course, on the other side of that, a team that has been delivering from the get-go on your screens now is Ardeont. And we mentioned it a little bit before, we even mentioned it leading up to playoffs. This is a team that has worked hard and played hard and has earned their spot here as the #1 seed, as the favorites to not just make finals, but win finals. But you've got to consider there is the very real threat that they fall short of the mark here today. They cannot let that happen, and I guarantee they will not let that happen.
I do want to speak to a couple of the other players on the Ardeont roster as well. Just a moment ago, we sort of went past the other DPS player, DM on this roster, who plays the Tracer and the McCree, the hit scan roles. And caught that in the second. Blank easy from Animo. Shots fired from the captain himself. He's going to shout to you exactly what it looks like. Ursa equals 6 blanks.
Wow.
DM equals noob though, so.
And so yeah, what were you saying about DM?
Well, I don't know. Maybe that's the thing, is if DM is the noob, he's the noob of the team, then that just speaks to how good everyone else is, which is equally as scary. But, you know, we talk about the fact that Ursa was the #1 DPS on their team. DM is part of that combo, but now Blank.
And first play you saw there was, of course, Huss, the other newcomer to this team, and actually someone that was on their roster quite a long time ago. They played under a different name previously, and he was in, and then Atar was in, and they did swap a little between the two, but they solidified on Atar, and of course ran him all throughout Season 1, but they've moved back to having Huss on the roster now. And he's been an interesting player. We've seen some good results, we've seen some mixed results, but if we're talking about Blank really starting to come into their own, you can't talk about it without mentioning Huss and his personal performance in that final weekend of play.
You probably have noticed there from Gumbo, who we went past, who is the flex support player of this team with the Overwatch World Cup hat on, because this is, of course, also the Australian Overwatch World Cup team, with the exception of Huss, who only just joined this team for Season 2, and who is the representative of the World Cup team, New Zealand instead. But the other 4 members here will be going to BlizzCon.
And these 6 members as well will also be going to APAC Premier alongside Flash Wolves and AHQ. So you've even got to understand where this team exists in the region, that they are considered one of the teams, as it were, worthy of representing the region. And that is because they, alongside Flash Wolves, have been one of the most consistent performers in this tournament. Returning to playoffs is just one marker of that. Indeed, having the grit, having the gumption to work over the entire series to make this roster come to life and start to push themselves even beyond their Season 1 play has been a part of that. Blank today would beat Season 1 Blank. I can guarantee you that. The question is, can they beat everyone else in Season 2?
Yeah, and the thing to remember here is it doesn't appear that Blank have reached their potential. I kind of mentioned that previously, but Blank only started to get these fantastic results towards the end of regular season play, at the end of the second round robin. So kind of like Mega in a way, and unfortunately Mega couldn't be in this playoffs because they had similar issues with trying to, like, I guess, meld and synergize their new players together. Blank, of course, had new members, both Huru and Huss, so getting it all together in time, especially now for playoffs, especially against Ardeont, was very important. First map pick has come through now. Home team pick from Ardeont. It's going to be Lee Jung-Tao, and smartly so, because we're avoiding Ilios.
Absolutely, you should avoid Ilios, and this is an interesting situation because if you do look at how this home and away is going to work out for these two teams, of course, Ardeont do get the very first pick. That's a huge thing for them, and Lee Jung-Tao has been their most picked control map as well. The only other one we've really seen them pick a couple of times, they've been to Nepal, right? And I believe they took us to Nepal the last time these teams met, when it went to Golden Point. So it's interesting they're going to Lee Jung-Tao. You felt they could have also potentially gone to Nepal, but I think this is a very smart pick. It is just Ardeont playing Ardeont for what is the first map of the most important series they will play to date. Yeah. From beyond there, though, because you mentioned Ilios, if Blank do get it to that map 6, they get the control pick, they can take it to Ilios, and you've got to just say, based off previous record, you can feel they could take it to a Game 7. Indeed, if Blank pick up the win here, a lot of it's going to come down to getting that tempo of picking up a win here on Lijiang Tower and kind of stealing that one off Ardeont.
There it is, the Blank fans in the East Stadium as well, cheering the away side team here as they go up against the toughest competition so far in the OPC, and the Ardeont fans on the other side as well. And you have some of the casters and some of the presenters from the Blizzard East Stadiums also supporting their favorite teams while we get into the first map. But you kind of touched on something quite important, which was the fact that we don't get to Ilios until map pick number 6. Now, we're assuming that's going to be Blank's map pick should we get that far. Now, it's important for Blank to be able to push it all the way to a map 6 or map 7 victory. If Blank are going to win tonight, they have to A, get off to a good start, take Lijiang Tower, get the win on the hybrid as well, get the first 2 maps underway because they're not favored to win Assault.
And there's an interesting thing here as well. The moment Blank pick up at least 1 map win, Ardeont have to be taken into what we can consider to be unknown territory. Ardeont only went to a Game 4 twice in the regular season. They will guaranteed be doing it in the semi-final, and then again in the finals if they make it there, because it is the best of 7. But they haven't gone beyond that. They have not gone beyond that escort. You do just repeat the hybrid and then some other game modes beyond that, but there's other things that are unknown quantities about Ardeont. What is their second favorite control? What is their second favorite hybrid? Where do they try and take these maps to? Where can Blank take them that is maybe uncomfortable for Ardeont? And I think the most important one is, what happens to Ardeont's mentality in that situation?
Yeah, mentality is an interesting thing to look at here because for both teams, when you look at the Ardeont side of things, they haven't been in a losing position. They haven't been in a position where they're seriously trying to catch up to the other team. The closest they've come to that was when Blank won Ilios against them in their last meeting. That was a 1-0 lead. It's not insurmountable at all. It's certainly manageable by Ardeont, but what happens when it's 2-0 lead? What happens if Blank get a 3rd map in there and start threatening the match point? What do Ardeont look like when they're actually behind?
And that match point is the real question, because again, you've got to go back to that series against Blank in the end of the 2nd round robin, because against Flash Wolves, it was Flash Wolves winning the 2nd map to tie up the series. I mean, it's scary, but it's still not that same kind of threat, right? Whereas Blank getting that 1-0 up, nearly even taking it to 2-0. Need I remind you guys, that was a draw. It went to Golden Point, which Ardeont then won. That was totally within the ballpark for Blank. They could have taken it to that match point. What happens to Ardeont then? Do these guys sweat under pressure? You would assume they wouldn't. These are very, very strong players, but they've never been in that situation. They don't know just as much as we don't know.
Yeah, and to speak to the other side of the table as we're now heading into the map itself, Blank, this appears to be a very mentally, a very sort of momentum-based team when it comes to mentality. They need to get those early map wins to feel confident. They need to make Ardeont bleed first. If it bleeds, then they can be killed, and that's exactly how Blank have to approach this matchup.
And of course, the ideal place to strike first blood for Blank here will be Lijiang Tower. That in itself poses all kinds of challenge. It is already an Ardeont favored map, a map that they are phenomenal on, and even as good as Blank are on control and on Lijiang Tower, you've still got to consider this is Ardeont territory right now. Both teams out the gate. Let's see who claims it.
Just a reminder as well, it's going to be best of 3 here, so both teams need to win only 2 stages of Lijiang to progress. It's going to be Blank coming out the gates with the pharmacy combo. Not something we've seen out of this team on Lijiang just yet.
Yeah, but something they've been favoring, and good pressure onto Jeff, but not quite getting him, like within an inch of his life there. Huss has just kind of got some decent aerial control, and you can see how much he is trying to focus down Jeff here. They've actually managed to get Ardeont a little split, so they do get priority on the point itself, but they haven't actually got the closeouts yet. But that's the follow-up on Jeff, able to catch him as he tries to wrap around into the point. Now looking to get the focus on the other supports, take the rug out from underneath Ardeont, and this opening skirmish going very much the way of Blank right now, losing Gunba in the mix. Ardeont will not go down without a fight here, but without those supports, they're having a much harder time keeping those members topped off, and it is going to be Blank getting the cap.
This is strategically well read by Blank. You have to have done your research going into this matchup, and against a team like Ardeont, you know they're bringing out the Genji, you know they're bringing out the Tracer, and you know they're going to have a hard time to actually challenge your Pharmacy combo. Now, the weakness we've seen with other teams running Pharmacy against Ardeont is that so far their Fire doesn't get enough work done. Not the case for Huss so far. He's been pumping out the damage, and he's been getting the kills.
Got to be aware of the anti-air Genji though. Erster more than comfortable using that Dragon Blade to go sky high, and here he goes, pulling it out. Good sound barrier from RQT to kind of answer it, and Erster getting pressured out by the Sparrow has had to back right off. The Pulse Bomb kill onto Trill though opens the gate now for Ardeont, getting pressure on RQT. Gunba nearly has the res, and they trade back on DM. That res will be a big factor now as Huru gets demexed, isn't able to use the self-destruct Rocket Barrage in, but Gunba can still come in. There's the res out now to try and bring them back up in this fight, just as Jeff had gone out to the Rocket Barrage, and that should be Blank still in control of this one, indeed closing out the kills. Ardeont not going to get their feet on the cap.
This is the kind of play that Ardeont were looking for. They wanted momentum-based gameplay in terms of kills. They want to snowball a lot of kills to get a lead. The problem here is they're playing directly into the res. They couldn't consider Gunba. They couldn't find Gunba. Pulse Bomb was already off the table. Dragon Blade was off the table. Gunba was completely safe. Comes in, saves Blank, and then they get the advantage back in their hands, and now still control of the cap goes their way.
Key thing to note though, Erster having committed Dragon Blade nearly has it again. Same cannot be said for Huss and Gunba, who were the key ultimates that swung that fight. But the pick on Animo means Jeff has to get that Transcendence in if they want a shot in this fight. Now Ardeont gonna have to commit a little bit more than that, but they've already got Huru out of the mech, got the Primal Rage out of Trill. RQT, Sound Barrier committed to save his tank, and Ardeont still have resources to use as this Dragon Blade doesn't quite find, just barely gets Huru off the back end, and Pulse Bomb on Trill should be enough to get Ardeont on the point and in back into control.
Well, Ardeont are finally back in now, and part of the reason is that DM so far has been quite consistent with the Pulse Bombs, killing Trill twice, 2 out of 2 Pulse Bombs. When the weapons are available, when the ammunition is there for Ardeont and they can strike with those DPS ults there. Dragon Blade wasn't effective the first time around, but this time Erster actually did get a kill. The big problem for Ardeont is still not seeing as much value out of Erster as you usually see when he pulls out a Dragon Blade. You're expecting 2, 3, maybe even 4 kills. Now, just the 1.
And you've got to consider this as being Ardeont behind in the ultimates. We've nearly got a Rocket Barrage, we've nearly got a res, and those were the ultimates that swung an earlier fight. Huss is already in a good position, pressuring out these tanks. He wants to pop Michelle, needs just one more rocket. In fact, he knows he's got it, goes to commit. They lose 8U up in the mix, so they need to get value out of this. Catching Jeff and Animo too for good measure. Gonna get deflected for the rest of it, but that res actually doesn't come in time to save Huss. It was bringing back 8U up. They need to get the closeouts here on these tanks to get back in control of the point. But with that done, they will be able to get the point, 94%. Can these supports stall it?
This looks like the winning moment for Blank here. 5 seconds remain, and Ardeont just have to book it directly to the cap itself. Everyone just has to touch it, and anyone who does is probably going to die. Animo going to be the first target.
Then he does not go down just yet, so that gives them a little more time, but they can get the aggression now into Jeff. Now these supports and tanks rather come in with no supports. Blank in control, even as they lose Gunba. RQT needs to stay alive to keep this sound barrier in the mix. They must respect the damage that Erster and DM can still do as they lose Huss, and they're just trading back and forth. Blank still have not secured it, and if Republic and DM stall it out long enough for Animo and Jeff, it could swing it back the other way. But Blank's still getting the kills. Huru's still got to self-destruct if it gets dire. In fact, committing it now to force DM off the point, and still Ardeont on the back foot, trickling in, but they catch Trill. This team has never done, not ever. You can never consider that they are, because the sound barrier now out. The Transcendence can save Jeff and the team to keep Ardeont in it.
Yeah, the problem is Ursa's now available to Dragon Blade as well. He's low. If he gets topped up, he can go in. He might not even have to if Blank are just going to get sort of killed here. And it does look like Ursa does finally pull it out.
He absolutely does, and they're able to clean up these members of Blank. It was only 6% for Blank to get the close out, but they couldn't get the follow-up fight. They only need to get one more, but we've seen Ardeont win from here. It is not over.
Yeah, that's the scary thing about Ardeont, because we absolutely have seen that. We've seen them come into the most disfavored fight you can imagine. Animo dying right at the start. Everyone just has to try and touch the cap for even a contest. Blank Esports were definitely in the driver's seat, but Ardeont kicked them off the road.
I mean, it was exactly the kind of stall we expect from Ardeont. That means it's the exact kind of stall that Blank should expect from Ardeont. Now they're going to have to commit these ultimates to get themselves back in the mix. Nice avoiding the self-destruct there by Huss as they try and get some members on towards the point. Need to find an in for that Rocket Barrage. They lose RQT. Res still isn't available, but there's going to be the damage coming in onto DM. They need more. Res onto RQT. They still need more. They need to get those supports out of the mix. Animo's nearly got a sound sound barrier. Jeff's nearly got a Transcendence. They demech Michelle, but they need more. There's Animo. That's more. They only lose Huwu, but he still gets one as he goes down. That's definitely more now as they close out on Michelle, plus the Pulse Bomb into the mix to force Republic way out of the fight. He's just trying to thread back in and out to keep it alive, but DM goes down, and Republic is now just stalling for Animo and Erster. He's going to go down. Animo will not get back on the point. Blank 1-0 up, the exact start they needed.
You got to feel good about that one so far. If you're either Blank or a Blank fan and you didn't believe that Blank could beat Ardeont, now it's time to start believing, because they've just shown exactly what it looks like when Blank is in control, exactly what it looks like when Blank can execute, and now they're doing just that, and suddenly the tables turn very quickly for Ardeont. We talk about the fact that Blank need an early lead. We talk about the fact that Blank mentally need that early lead, and now they absolutely have it.
And we talk about the fact that Blank are the only other team to have done this to Ardeont thus far, specifically on control. And part of the question, unspoken as it was can they repeat that performance? Because this is playoffs, this is semi-finals, this is a whole other beast compared to the regular season. But that 1-0 up, that's got to suggest that they can do it.
This is where it gets a little tricky though, because Blank, they've relied on the pharmacy combo somewhat, but can they win without it? You do have Huwu on a Xayah pick, the Xayah pick that got him to that #1 tank position in the first place, but they need to use that now to win.
Eat You Up, beautiful to take out Erster there, really getting the damage on to open it up. They're still just trying to look for these supports on the side. They know how reliant the DPS of Ardeont are to back up to them, but Blank looking relatively in control of the ground now. Good sleep onto Republic, but they can't get anything extra for that, unfortunately. Now it's Huss pressured out. Ardeont safely reset so far. Nice pick on Gunber, and they took out the health pack. There was nowhere for him to get back to. Now it's all just going to be raw trade kills as Blank need to get a few more on the board. Lacking their healers now, even as they pick Animo. The EMP is in, but they're not quite getting the closeouts just yet. In fact, it's Republic getting closed out upon, but they've got Huss. It's only EU Up still in the fight, and he knows he can't go toe-to-toe with all of these members at once, and as DM picks him, Ardeont get the point.
And a micro thing here as well, when you look at the meta of this game right now, when you look at how Blank have just conditioned Ardeont, Ursa started this map with the Soldier. He was expecting a pharmacy combo out of Blank. He thought he was going to get that perfect counter against it, because now Ardeont have to respect it. Ardeont have to respect the fact that they've already lost to Blank's pharmacy combo not one time, but twice, if not even more now. And Ursa immediately swaps back onto Genji when he knows it's not the case.
Trying to get the damage in, but great selection from Ardeont to go right onto those healers. This is the absolute deconstruction we know Ardeont are capable of, as Eat You Up the only one left alive.
Now Ardeont can snowball this fairly effectively. Jeff nearly onto the EMP again. This is now not a composition that Blank necessarily want to play against it. Huwu is going to be shut down considerably during the EMP, loses that 200 shield, loses the ability to use anything, and now DM's going to send him straight back to the respawn room. Blank is stuck in their base.
DM had already stalled them by killing Eat You Up, who had been the only one to not die in the previous fight. He also couldn't regroup with his team because of that. Then the stick on Huwu, Blank have lost a huge chunk of time because of DM alone.
Yeah, we haven't even seen the ultimates really come out yet. DM used the pulse bomb. That was enough to just keep Blank so far still stuck in. This is going to be Blank trying to move in now, but against an EMP, it's going to be tricky.
Pulse Bomb from EU Up not quite getting anything as they just go aggressive with the Dragon Blade, still not even needing the EMP. They got the ultimate out of Trill as well. That's already a better than even trade because they got the Pulse Bomb too. And Ardeont, they just want to spawn camp. Blank are never going to get a shot to use these ults.
And that's the thing is, who's still sitting on a Graviton Surge here, so you actually have to go on the events, the offensive is eventually if you're on the Blank Esports side. The problem is, Huwu has been dying. The other issue with him dying is he's not building up energy, and suddenly Blank are not looking healthy.
There it goes, out avoiding the defense matrix. Huss is threaded around the side. Oh, DM shutting him down. EMP comes in, but they do get the sound barrier. Gunner's still going to lose his life, and they're just not quite finding the leg up. Closing out on Erster, though, is something for them, but not enough to get them to the cap. Unfortunately, just taking a bit too long on that final fight. Tying it 1-1 now is Ardeont.
I'll tell you what, if there is a noob here, it's definitely not DM, so maybe a bit of an inside joke from Ardeont, but you just look at the way DM played there, absolutely control Blank, shutting down Huss in the middle of a Deadeye, winning 1v1s with AEU up, then stalling even longer by getting kills onto Huwu, shutting down their Xayah point. This team has faced the pure wrath of Huwu Xayah before. When Huwu gets up at 100 charge, when he's really in the zone, he's really pumping up that damage, he's kind of unstoppable. But how do you stop him? As you just take him right out from the beginning. Cut the legs off, he doesn't get any energy whatsoever, he's stuck in base, the rest of Blank is stuck in base. Not even a Graviton Surge in that situation actually saved them.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's unfair to say DM carried it, but you certainly felt his impact. Ardeont, though, this time around, they want to fight fire with fire. They recognize the Pharmacy combo and Huss's strength on that. They're going to match it with Michelle and Jeff.
As the interesting thing is they also could have gone for Ursa on the Soldier to try and match this one. Going directly for the Pharmacy combo is not something we've seen so far out of Ardeont, but that also means Blank haven't seen this.
Yeah, this is brand new territory for them, and Michelle so far just doing a better job of zoning out these members of Blank. Huss, I mean, A, not landing the rockets onto Michelle, and B, not really landing enough onto the other members of Ardeont. They keep trying to identify Jeff and take him out, but when he's flying, they're having a much harder time doing that with the Mercy. Sorry, with the Farah even, the Far Mercy, both of them. And Erster getting the opening pick now on the point itself. I mean, Blank just didn't even have the ground. They had to go for it anyway, otherwise Ardeont got it for free, but they're not really getting any trade kills in this skirmish.
The thing to remember here is that Ardeont are way more committed to this Pharmacy combo than Blanka. At some stage, if Huss wants to go into a Soldier, he can. If Gumba wants to go onto a Zenyatta or something else, he can. But for Ardeont, they got to stick onto this. Ursa's already on the D.Va. They're not going to swap 3 members off. You can try and counter Ardeont, or you can try and go at them toe to toe. But the time is running out for Blank to make those kind of decisions.
Exactly. I mean, that may just be kind of their end here, but you're right. Time running out. Eat You Up does get a good connect with the Pulse Bomb, allows them to close out in Republic and DMAC Ursta, but they need to still get more than that anyway. Res is a factor now for Jeff, bringing back Republic. Can't bring back Ursta's mech though, but he's going to do that by himself as Trill goes down to fight Huwu. Looking for a big one here. Does at least get Ursta, who is still just trying to remech on the backside of that, but they're still not ahead in this fight. Still waiting on that rocket barrage. Had committed the res just a moment ago, but didn't get enough value off it. They've got to stay in this fight now, almost just for sheer grit purposes, but they can't really safely commit the ultimates. Are going to lose a few too many members and do back out.
And Ardeont not even really spending ultimates here. They're kind of matching Blank for ultimates. Both reses were committed in the middle of that fight, and now Blank, they got to come in to use that sound barrier. RQT wanted to have it, but he actually got killed mid-air while he was trying to channel it in the previous fight. So now Blank, they're kind of on the back foot. They've been losing without using ultimates, but Ardeont have been winning without losing ultimates, and that's even better.
And it's so unsafe for Huss to set up for a rocket barrage, because if Ursta reads it, he can set up a self-destruct somewhere that Huss can't get away from. They don't have a res to bring him back. DM doesn't get anything with the Pulse Bomb. Blank have the ultimates to commit. Oh, Michelle getting Huss with his own rocket barrage as Huss channels means that is a great opening for Ardeont. They've got the ultimates to commit as well. Huwu gets DMAC'd, and Blank just aren't getting anything still. Not even return kills. Never mind that Jeff nearly has a res, and Gumba is further away than he would like to be. 90% now, with these last members getting staggered out, and Ardeont looking for a spawn camp. Not looking good for Blank.
And I don't know if Blank can do it in the same situation. When we saw Ardeont here into Night Markets, they dived on the camp. They had some ultimates available, and they continue stalling it out. When you look at the Blank side, they just don't have the same tools.
Trill in, but they can't get Huss in to follow up, so there's no DPS aside from Eat You Up, who now has to work double time. Or they do pick out Jeff and they get Ursta's mech, but they're losing these tanks. Huwu needs the self-destruct badly, and Gunba needs that res even more badly. They need to commit something in here. Eat You Up still just trying to thread in and out. They need to get these kills. Self-destruct buys them a bit of space as they try to get Huss back in, and Huwu does remech, but there's still no res there. They've held on to the point where they can now regroup, but the same is true for Ardeont, and that means Jeff comes in with a res as well. It means the Blank still need to get kills if they want their res to mean anything. There it goes out, and it is a big one, but they still need to convert those kills. Huwu gets back into his mech.
No res for Ardeont.
Jeff, that's big for them now. Now they've got the pressure on the pointers. I Eat You Up, still just threading in and out despite the sound barrier. Ardeont will fight this to the last, but it looks like Blank might just barely have their ticket in. Jeff could still turn that all back around though, as he books it to the point with that red.
Final opportunity here for Ardeont. They got to absolutely have to use that res. Ursa now DMAC'd as well. This has to be the triple, and now suddenly we're into 6v5. Troll's going to have to prime a rage here. By the way, Ardeont still have control of this camp.
And they instantly came back into a numbers advantage because of those late picks on Gunba at the very end of that. Michelle was nearly at the rocket barrage, and Jeff's res, despite dying with it twice, comes in to save the day for Ardeont. No members of Blank left on the point, and 99-0 as that was, it was still an intense closing fight, but secured by Ardeont, now 1-0 up, off to a good start.
It's hard to sort of describe Ardeont accurately here, but I want to call them, they're kind of like a lizard, right? Because they just regrow these limbs almost. You think you got Ardeont, you think you've taken them out fully, but Animo comes on your night market with just a sound, well, not even a sound bar. He just comes in, he dies, you're at a player advantage. You have all these kind of trickled members arriving onto the camp itself, and Ardeont still managed to find a victory. Then you take it over onto Gardens. Essentially the same kind of thing happens where Blank have this 4-man res, they deny Jeff from getting the res themselves, and then it just comes down to basically what looked like a 6 versus 3, and still Ardeont held on.
And the truth is, to actually win that fight, Blank would have probably had to kill Jeff with the res up 3 times. Like, him having blown it earlier than that wouldn't have meant that he wouldn't, like, that Blank could have won it later on down the line. It would have meant they lost it earlier if Jeff had been able to commit it. It's good target prioritization from Blank to keep taking out Jeff like that, but ultimately, they couldn't do it enough times. And by the way, that was still only the fight to get them started on the point. That kind of tells you, despite dropping that first map, how in control Ardeont became as they approached the end of that. Now 1-0 up, like we said, off to the good start they need. But Blank definitely not down and out for the count.
So the important thing to notice here is a couple of things you want to be reminded of. The fact that Ardeont were kind of, they adapted quite well, right? Because you saw on the second map where at a control center, Ursa was expecting farmers to come out. He started out with the soldier. Now there's a level of respect that Ardeont are now giving to Blank to say, look, we know you got a good pharmacy. We know we're losing to it. This is how we're going to respond. And it was a notable difference when we got to control center, and it was Blank playing, you know, that ground-based team, but which is fairly normal, and it didn't work out for them. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the replays now. Going to start things off with Night Market.
So watch Huss in the sky here. He instantly looks for Jeff. His first few rockets are all towards Jeff, and no one's quite able to contest him for those opening moments. The team starts clustering so that they can better keep Jeff alive, but it's when they go for this maneuver, right? They haven't killed Jeff yet, but Blank have the positioning on the point. Jeff moves around the other side, doesn't have the safety of his team, and that, paused right there, is the exact moment he goes down. Huss lands a couple of key shots, he goes down, and it is all open from there. I've never seen a team split Ardeont so effectively because they're normally themselves so in control, but that just goes to show what Blank were able to do with this Pharah. But it also goes to show what Ardeont were then able to do on the third map, on Gardens, where they chose to, like I said, fight fire with fire and match the Pharah.
The other thing to remember or to take note of here is the rotation from Blank. So prior to us sort of pausing on the screen here, the fact that Blank immediately saw the opportunity to capitalize on the camp itself as it starts to open up 2 seconds away now before the control point unlocks. Blank are going to be there first. They're going to get the first pick onto the side, and then it's going to be Ardeont attacking into what was potentially just Blank control territory. Ardeont are not going to let Blank cap it straight off the bat. That definitely didn't happen, but also Ardeont are late to the party, and that's where Blank get their advantage.
Exactly, and that's a position we rarely see Ardeont in. Normally they are the ones with the control of the ground. Again, it is what Blank were able to do with the Pharah. It was the pressure that they put on the members of Ardeont to cause them to pull back for a moment and cluster. It meant they didn't lose any members, where a lot of other teams would have, and they would have started that opening skirmish with a numbers disadvantage. But it does mean they don't have the positional advantage. Now the trick here is that Blank are able to take that and run with it. There are other teams that have done that to Ardeont, but Ardeont is such a good team that they're able to come back in with even numbers and still win fights. This is the real swing one, because picking off Jeff meant they could instantly get on top of the other supports here. Jeff, by the way, is alive now because he is respawned. That's how quickly he went down in the fight, and that means Blank are able to secure a cap with only losing Trill.
And it's interesting to note for playing against a team like Ardeont, as it's always more effective to take up their supports first. For a lot of teams, you would actually prefer to kill the DPSs first. Really sort of cut them off the top of the head instead, because that's where the damage comes from. If you take away the team's damage, then they can't kill you back. But actually for a team like Ardeont, I mean, everyone's so effective, everyone's still just able to get kills, and it's very hard to get the DPSs down when the supports are so good at peeling, when the supports are so good at sort of rotating their heals and rotating their abilities on the cooldowns as well. So the fact that both Jeff and Animo went down, that was pretty much a guaranteed fight win from Blank. After that, it's all kind of just slim pickings.
Yeah. And it's kind of like looking at a fist flying right at you, right? I'm going somewhere with this. Because you'd think, right, that fist isn't going to hurt if I can find a way to, like, I don't know, break the knuckles or something, or cut off the hand. The truth is, you break the thumb and the whole hand hurts. They can't even throw a punch. That's what killing the supports tends to do to Ardeont.
So we've already more than one fight in here, and this is the fight loss that unfortunately put Blank into the position where they had to get spawn camp. And it does start with both Jeff and Ursa getting kills We're at the stage where Jeff does use an EMP here as well. Actually, not in this fight. He used it in the next fight. They won this even cleaner than that. The fact that they didn't even have ultimates, they didn't have to use any ultimates, put them really far in the lead.
Exactly, and that's the thing, Blank just weren't quite able to get in after that. The first fight actually came down relatively even, but it was Ardeont just with a few more legs in it. And I think part of that, I'll be completely honest, is Jeff being on that Sombra. Because it's one thing to pick out the Zenyatta, it's another thing to pick out the Sombra. It's doing a different thing, it's in different places, and it's not as much of like a crux point of the team in that situation. So even if you do successfully find him, you don't quite pull the rug out the same way that you would. Like maybe you shift the rug a little bit and they get thrown off balance, but they don't fall flat on their face, right? It's a very different situation. And then immediately after that fight, that really assisted in the spawn camp was you started seeing DM's impact. The solo kill on Eat You Up, followed by the pulse bomb kill on Trill, on Huwu rather, just as Eat You Up was respawning, and just with his like one-man army there, added about 20% to the cap.
And, you know, that first fight even went in, sort of, it started in the way of Blank as well. So I want to go back to that first fight where Erster started on the Soldier. He died, went to Genji very quickly. That was a player advantage that Blank could have capitalized on. But the rest of the members of Ardeont, you mentioned Jeff here, was one of the key members that sort of turned things around for the Ardeont Suns. So Blank, had they been able to capitalize on that window of, that window of opportunity and get that cap win, or they get that cap right at the top of the bat, it could have been a very different control center stage for Blank, because it seemed like when they were behind, they never were able to play effectively from behind and get themselves back in. Ardeont already know how to play in the lead. They're in the lead most of the time against every single team. They're very effective at that. But actually Ardeont are even more fantastic when they're behind. This is what it looks like when you get a night market situation, when it's like, you don't expect them to win, and they do. That's what it looks like when you get into the Gardens. You don't expect them to win, and they do. Unfortunately, Blank, they don't have that kind of damage control.
Unfortunately not. And I want to touch on another key moment of that opening skirmish, actually, by the way, because if we're mentioning Jeff being on the Sombra, we've also got to mention what the EMP was able to do in that opening fight. They charged up super quickly. He was able to hack the big health pack on the side of Blank, just on the small stairs, and you saw a moment, actually, where Gunba tried to retreat to that exact pack, not even knowing that Jeff had been there. That's how good his own movement, Jeff's, was to be in that position. It helped cut off what Blank were able to do, because they didn't have the health packs for the supports to fall back to, which is really big for the Ana, who is completely reliant on health packs, Bionade, or your friendly Lucio to top off your health. And then the EMP they got, they barely had any health, and they were still able to capitalize.
All right, so let's check out now Gardens and the opening moments here as well. So it's interesting, because this is when you have an Ardeont side that says, we're going to try and match you pharmacy to pharmacy. They're not pulling out the Soldier here. And I actually mentioned, this is probably when Blank want to be pulling out the Soldier themselves. They only have a slight window here. It takes until, I guess, Ardeont get to 11% after they eventually camp this one out after pushing Blank back, that you kind of have to say, look, if Blank want to change, they need to change now, because after Blank get ultimates, after Huss and Gumbo the rest get ultimates, it's too late to change.
And the truth is, we know that Huss can play McCree. We know that Huss can play Soldier. I mean, he even played McCree on Control Center. And we know that he is a really good Soldier player as well. They had the option available to them, but they were very committed to the Pharaoh. It's almost one of those things, you know, sometimes you just fall a bit too far into this idea of, well, it worked for us in the past, we've got to do it again.
What I want to highlight here is the ground space control. So you can sort of see from the blue circle and the red circle that was just there, Blank was sort of forced back towards their own mega health pack right in the back of the sort of courtyard area there, and they had to hop across the ditch to make it onto the cap itself. So when you look at the pharmacy, that was even. They're just dueling in the skies. No one's really hitting each other. But when you look at the ground fight, that is specifically where Ardeont were ahead. That's how they got the space control. That's why they got on the cap first. And unlike Night Market, this time it was Blank late to the party.
And you saw something really smart out of the Pharaoh as well. Once Ardeont realized they had controlled the ground at the front, one of the ways you deal with the Pharaoh is you go somewhere the Pharaoh can't shoot at you. Pharaoh loves big, wide open spaces. That's why on Gardens, the move is to go around the backside. You come in the far side of the point, you are undercover the whole time, and the Pharaoh has to get really down and dirty into some very vulnerable positions to have a lot of impact. But Ardeont knew the moment Blank pulled back that that was their only option available to them, and readied themselves for that maneuver as well. The Pharaoh had to be a little bit vulnerable, but in a way also wasn't, because the rest of Ardeont were prepared for it as well. Blank was still walking into Ardeont territory. The mistake a lot of Pharaoh teams make when they get control of that open ground is they don't anticipate the sort of anti-Pharaoh movement, but Ardeont doing exactly that. like I said, it's this notion of fighting fire with fire, picking their own Pharah, using it the way it needs to be used, but also recognizing the shortfalls of that and how to continue getting mileage after the fact.
I think the mind games here are quite real for both sides, because you have a stage where on Control Center, you're kind of mind gaming Ursa, making him think you're going to do something, then come out with something different. Then on to Gardens, look, it was totally an Ardeont's game because they pulled out the Pharmacy. It was unexpected. Look, we didn't really say, I think Ardeont going to pull Pharmacy here. We just don't see that.
Yeah.
At best, you were going to see Ursa on the Soldier. And then you're on the blank side. You were prepared for something else entirely, and you got something else delivered to your doorstep instead. And Ardeont took advantage of that because they knew what Blank were going to bring to the table. They knew it was going to be a Pharmacy, and they said, we're going to bring our own Pharmacy. And Blank, when they saw that, they didn't have an appropriate answer.
And that's the thing, you've also got to compliment the adaptation there of Ardeont compared to Blank, because the moment it wasn't the Pharah on Control Center, they went straight off the Soldier, but Ursa onto the Genji, they knew what they could do.
Yeah.
We'll go into this replay here where you see it, right? Blank still on that Pharah right towards the end. They're committed to it. Now you can understand holding on to it for the sake of ultimates, but that can also be a bit of a sunk cost fallacy. And I think part of it as well was actually maybe even wanting to match Mercy Reses with Jeff. So let's speak about Jeff a little bit here, because he dies with this Mercy Res available in this fight. Blank are off to a bad start. Trill totally rescues it there with the pick onto Jeff. They really, really struggle here. It goes very back and forth. EUUp is just barely able to keep himself topped off by retreating to the health pack. You see Gunba ready to come in with a res soon. You see Jeff starting to get on his way in. He's going to die again before he's even finally able to commit that res.
Yeah, so Gumba's positioning here and Gumba's ult percentage here is extremely important. The target priority from Blank also extremely important. So that's a 4-man res coming up now. Every single member. Now look at Jeff's hit points because he's the next target going down. Now the fight is heavily in favor of Blank. And the big play is actually from Animo. This was a little bit questionable because on one side, if you want to play a safe game, it's ill-advised to use a sound barrier there. You've only got 2 other teammates. You're only using sound barrier on 3 people max. It's almost better to back off. But Ardeont here deciding to stay in, still losing members. By the way, it's still Blank picking up all those kills. But now Jeff finally gets the resin and it's even.
Here comes Jeff, and Gunba died immediately prior to that res. That was the huge thing that changed everything there. And you kind of, I mentioned it a moment ago, even if they hadn't killed Jeff those other 2 times and he'd committed the res earlier, it probably would have just meant Blank would have would have lost the fight or 2 earlier themselves. The interesting thing about that, by the way, is you also notice just prior to Gunba's massive res that he was able to commit, this is something really clever that Ardeont do. They will stay in the fight, but they're not fully committed to the fight. Now, I know that sounds really strange, but you even saw, like, they choose when they're really going to commit. And in the fight before Gunba's res, the commit was the moment Jeff came back in. Jeff came back in, and within 2 seconds, they had killed the 4 members that Gunba then went on to res. And then, of course, Jeff died immediately after. But that's the thing. Ardeont, with those 5 members, against those other members of Blank, were in the fight without really hard committing to the fight. The moment they had that extra member, the moment they were set up for it, that was when they pressed the go button. And that's why this team is so hard to overcome, because they'll stay in that fight for a really long time. It feels like they're kind of trickling onto the point, but what they're actually doing is holding back. They're fighting safely and waiting until the moment they can recommit fully.
And the thing about Ardeont is this is why they're so unkillable. They feel so unbeatable sometimes is in any other situation, if that was any other team in Animo's spot saying, I'm going to sound barrier for myself and 2 other members, a 3-man sound barrier going up against 6 members, that's a complete suicide play. That's a total waste of an ultimate, and you're not going to win that. You're not going to come out on top of it. Even if you start sending more players in, you're just feeding more ult charge into the Blank zone. If that was any other team, but it's not Ardeont. If Ardeont do that, they stay in, they're converting kills, and this is kind of the hallmark of what Ardeont can achieve, which is the fact that despite how down they are always getting trades, and that's how they get back in.
Exactly. Well, and that's exactly how they did get back in, because that first map did go the way of Blank, but after that, it was all Ardeont securing themselves now the first map of this semi-final on track now to make finals, and the question becomes, will Blank strike back?
Now with map 1 out of the way, a potential 6 more maps to go now. I'm really hoping Blank can make the distance, but we're going to have to find out exactly how far the series goes as OPC Season 2 action does continue after this break. Welcome back, and that wasn't too long of a break now, so we're about to head into map number 2 pretty soon. We got May to welcome us in.
There's a couple of cosplayers there actually. There's a May. We saw a Tracer and a Diva earlier. We saw what's the name of the Diva skin? The Lunar New Year one. If I say the name, I'm going to say it.
I'm not a Diva player, so I'm not going to be able to tell you.
And I'm not a Korean, so I can't say it properly either. But you know the one I mean, like the one from Lunar New Year. It was really cool. Maybe we'll get a chance to see it. But cosplayers aside, man, you can see there in the crowd the Blank supporters, and well, with Blank now 0-1 down at the start of the series, rather, we kind of talked about how important that win would be for that kind of high momentum thing they're looking for here in the semi-final. What that kind of means is they really do need to pull it back now on Hybrid where it's their pick.
Well, the difference I want to sort of make here is the fact that while they're down in terms of maps, because they got that one stage win on not Gardens, it was Night Market, that kind of does still give a bit of a momentum boost to Blank, and at least from a mental front that says, okay, we have the ability here to muscle out Ardeont. It's possible. Look, it was hard. That was a very tough Night Market map to actually win, but it is possible. Now that we're getting into King's Row, which is Blank's pick, and they're kind of known now for the infamous Bastion strat on your own attack, and I would say that's even kind of dangerous now, because if you're Ardeont, you're far more prepared for something like that.
Yeah, Ardeont should have absolutely scoped that out. There was even another interesting, almost more meta thing that was kind of crossing my mind there, and you can see it here. If we go to a second hybrid, which we will if Blank pick up at least one map win, we actually go to Ardeont's pick. Now, Ardeont love King's Row. So here's the thing. If Blank feel confident that they can win King's Row, you would almost expect them to pick a different hybrid here, so that when Ardeont get their map pick, you go to King's Row, you go into a known quantity, I suppose. Because we don't see much of Ardeont not on King's Row. We've seen them a bit on Numbani, where they did drop to Flash Wolves, but Numbani is not necessarily a comfortable area for Blank. I mean, I say not necessarily because we just don't know. It may be, it may not be. But you've just got to consider, right? You put yourself in a situation now, as good as you may feel on King's Row, where maybe now you don't know what's going to happen later on in the series, where you find yourself in Game 5.
And part of the reason this becomes an important map for Blank to win is that we go into Assault next, and they've traditionally been known to be the weaker Assault team of what is essentially kind of across the board, like even to teams that are lower than them in the standings, they have been dropping that Assault. So now going into Assault after King's Row, if they lose this, it's going to be suddenly 3-0, and then Ardeont on match point, you got to feel that's a very difficult place mentally and also physically to be in for Blank, being 0-3 down in that match point scenario.
I mean, the truth is, if they drop hybrid here, they're already on the back foot before it even goes to match point, just because of their record on Assault. It would be a turnaround of pretty significant proportions to not only win Assault against a top team, but also win it against specifically this team here being Ardeont.
And that's right, because you have to look at the last time we saw these two teams meet, and the Assault was easily the least competitive map in that series between them, and everything else was Blank taking shots back, was Blank being in the lead even, but on Assault, it was a completely one-sided affair. Volskaya Industries was that pick, and it did not go well for Blank, so it's not just a thing that you got to say, it's a thing that you have to really consider here, especially if you're on the Blank side, but one map at a time, and it has to be King's Row first, and this has to be a good start for Blank.
Let's talk about mind games though, because last time they were here, Blank ran that Bastion strat. That's what Ardeont will be.
Oh, they're doing it. Yep.
Yeah, that's what Ardeont will have scouted and expected. So Blank now, they've got to know that Ardeont can be ready for this.
The problem here for Ardeont is that they haven't stopped Blank from really moving up here. I think Ardeont should be far more expecting of this. You actually saw that Blank didn't go immediately for the strat. They scouted out the lineup. They said, are Ardeont running Xayah Reinhardt? If they are, then we're going for the strat.
And that's interesting, right? It makes you think that A, Blank had a backup strat, and it makes you B, think that Ardeont are prepared for this anyway. They're willing to run that shield comp into this. We're going to have to see if that pays off. And already getting good pressure on Eat You Up. What they're trying to do is just sort of split up and find different angles to hit him from. But that's difficult, because them being split up allows these frontliners to take advantage. But RQT, the first casualty, trade one back on Michelle. They need to get a lot of mileage out of this, trying to keep Republic shield down as often as they can. But it's quite hard to keep that Tracer out of here. Without that boot from RQT, they lose Trill and they lose Husk right
This
as
is
they try
falling
and
apart.
commit. And that means no shield. The sleep connects. Eat You Up is going to stay alive at least through that, but that was the commit moment for Blank, and they just got nothing out of it.
I'll tell you what, Ardeont did find a way to adapt to it. They didn't go for a hard counter. They didn't go for even any sort of area control based counterplay there from Ardeont either, but what they did do was keep DM on the high ground, keep him peppering down Blank. Eventually DM gets a pulse bomb. If he lands just one pulse bomb and eat up, that entire attack fails, and that's all DM's plan was. He did even better than that. He killed Husk and still has the pulse bomb now.
We got to see the other one though pay off here. That's got to be the grab, but they lose Gunba in the mix. Eat You Up is trying to commit with that ultimate, but they need more work done. They've got Hubo on the high charge though, and Eat You Up's able to set up on the backside of it now, and they are looking to get into this fight in earnest now. DM a little bit kind of stuck off to the side, but while he's busy repairing, Eat You Up gets flanked by Erster, and this is still Ardeont keeping this point alive. Members back up, they're going to come back in for a contest. Trill needs to get something big with the Earth Shatter. That's going to be the grab. The Earth Shatter out doesn't really catch many members because Ardeont are still just kind of on their way in, but the grab has bought them time. They got the pick on Husk, the pulse bomb now onto Trill, and Ardeont are still kind of in this one. Even with the closer respawn for Blank, if they're not getting kills here, it's not going to mean anything, and it is Ardeont able to regroup and get back in place for defense.
And I do have to correct myself there because I said DM on Tracer. In fact, it's Erster on Tracer. It's an easy mistake to make when you consider that DM is usually the Tracer player. But look, the other compliment here, I guess, is that Erster's playing so well on the Tracer, he just looks like a second DM. And that's something that Ardeont can really utilize right now. Imagine having two DMs on your team. That's essentially what is going on.
Well, Blank, at least off those two major moves, have now got 2/3. DM channeling the Dead Eye. Just looking to get pressure. Ooh, Trill going down to Republic. That makes it hard for them to actually get anything out of the space that Eat You Up creates with this Bastion. And by the way, they're still just pummeling this position. There's only the one shield right now from Husk. That's going to be the grab out from Hugo again. They need that big follow-up, and they're trying. All they have is Republic, but they just can't quite get Michelle. They're working overtime to keep him top
Shallow
off.
grab.
Yeah, Eat You Up's going to have to commit to this low ground. There's going to be the grab from Michelle. Eat You Up's got to avoid it while still getting an angle on Michelle. They've got Huwu. They've got the supercharger out of Husk as well, and Eat You Up, he does get DM, but he's struggling. He's getting flanked around and constantly having to reposition. He's on the ground. He is vulnerable, and as Republic rejoins the fray, Ardeont still have a huge opportunity to get in this fight. The Earth Shatter comes down. They don't quite get anything off it though. Blank still kind of in this, still trying to pressure the cap, still struggling to close out kills now as they lose Trill. There goes Eat You Up, and that could be the last gasp here for Blank as they lose Gunba. They lose the whole lot. Gong sounding, 7 seconds left. Who can even punch this point?
No one's there.
It's got to be Trill. He's got to try at the very least, but even then, he's probably going to die before he gets there. Can't even get through that grab, no sir, and that is a first hold from Ardeont.
I'm going to be looking forward to, I guess, taking another look at that in the replay section later on. There was a lot going on in terms of the wider scope of strategy from Ardeont. What I can say now is the fact that Ardeont played that, I guess, very impressively to start things off with. That's probably an obvious thing to say because they did win there. But what was impressive was the fact that they didn't go for a direct counter. They didn't say, okay, well, we have to play dive against this now, or we have to make these X and Y hero changes. Even when they died, even when players respawned, they didn't change up. You didn't see a Winston, you didn't see a Diva. They stuck to their guns and they made it work. And the way they made it work was just by playing, actually, without wanting to sound crude here, but outplaying Blank, because Blank's entire game plan is to win that ground fight. They didn't win that ground fight. Trill dies to Republic. Huru didn't get the kills either, despite dropping the grabs. Neither of Blank's tanks could get the mileage, and Michelle and Republic did get that mileage, and also you expect Blank to win the tank fights when you have Eat Up on the Bastion. That just wasn't the case. It was a bit of a disaster.
It's an interesting strategy, right? Because you're wanting to set up that Bastion and Orisa to just pummel shots down. You want to open up the space for those other two tanks, the Reinhardt and Zarya, to sit on the point and basically go, okay, either you sit back and let us cap the point for free, or you come onto the point to contest it and sit right in the line of fire. Your pick. The only problem is, if you lose the Reinhardt or the Zarya, and even worse, if you lose both, you lose all of your ability to capitalize on that pressure and on that space of the Bastion Orisa. Really smart by Ardeont to prioritize those picks, because a lot of teams would tunnel vision on the Bastion.
The thing is, they didn't lose sight of the Bastion either. You saw Ursa on the Tracer, you saw him peppering down and annoying Eat You Up every time. That kind of helps in terms of mitigating damage because Eat You Up has to respond to the fact that there's a Tracer close to him, and that kind of made it so it was less likely for Eat Up to get a kill onto either Republic or Michelle. But now, it's going to be a brand new attack, and this time, it's going to be Ardeont.
Ooh, nice pick. Speaking of get a kill, with DM here on this Widowmaker, and by the way, interesting that it isn't Erster, but with DM on this Widowmaker, all they really need is a good pick on the side of Blank to open this point up. If they can get a commanding fight, they get on the point, and they're going to get it up to that 94%. That's all they got to beat. Blank have to first hull.
To sort of speak to why it might not be Ursa here, we've seen Ursa go up against Blank as a Widow before. They didn't really go too well for him, so we're going to see if DM can do the job even better. He is known to be the primary hit scan player of the team. So far, well, we'll have to just wait for the results.
Ursa trying to get the wraparound on Trill wasn't quite successful, but with the kill on Huwu, Blank lose that charge and they lose the potential for the grab. They're kind of looking a little lean on members here because as they're respawning, they're also losing members. Ardeont with the closer respawn mean that they don't even have to go even. They can just, oh wow, DM, my goodness, that's going to be it. Surely, just off those shots. Wow. That's how volatile that situation is with the Widowmaker. That's how dangerous this team of Ardeont is, and that's how close they already had the cap before those kills came through.
I think at every stage we've seen on King's Row so far, Ardeont looked like a ticking time bomb. They really put the pressure and they put the clock on the Blank. It's never the other way around, and even when it should be the other way around, which is Blank saying, running a Bastion on attack, you have to come and meet us, you have to come deal with this Bastion, or we're just going to out-pressure you and just win. That just wasn't the case. It felt like eventually Ursa gets himself a pulse bomb and just kills Eat Up anyway, just completely dismantles that attack. On their own attack, they're running against a Junkrat. They know there's going to be a Junkrat. They've seen this from Blank many a time. This is where the research really comes into play. So what do? You run a Widowmaker. You can get easy picks onto Huss. You can get picks onto everybody else. And because you only need a first cap on the A itself, it's easier to set up that win condition.
And you know what's really smart about what Ardeont did there? When it's at, what was it, 94 point something percent, I think 0.6, that's essentially a full 100, right? So what Ardeont do, instead of going for a full-on fight, getting a win, letting Blank respawn and come in for a final contest, they just scrap. They scrap it out, get a third, get two third, keep scrapping, then they hard commit, and all they need is that one fight win. Beautifully handled by Ardeont, just on the attack and the defense both, and a very deserved map win to put them now 2-0 up in the series, about to get the home side pick again now for the next map, which is Assault. And we already mentioned how a loss there on Hybrid kind of puts Blank immediately on the back foot. That is if they weren't already on the back foot after dropping Lijiang Tower.
I think the word to use here to describe Ardeont, which will be very fitting and very accurate, has to be adaptation. They've done such a great job, not just in this match, but across the entire season. Look, every time they look like they've struggled, they've come back, they've learned, they come back even stronger. And it sort of shows that because they expected, look, they expected King's Row to be a likely pick. They knew this went to a draw the last time the two teams met, and they knew what was the problem, which is the fact that they couldn't deal with his Bastion of Rissa Strat that Blank pulled out. So what they said was, okay, we know it's coming, but we're going to be much better prepared. And it's such a statement for them to say, also we're going to play the same thing that we use in the losing situation and still make that work. And that has to be the Ardeont saying, look, you know, so good at adapting to even go that far. And
that's kind of the smartness of it, because you even mentioned it yourself. Blank specifically pulled out that Hanzo to start with to do all that scouting, to see that that was that same team comp from Ardeont and go, okay, therefore we can Bastion Orisa. So actually, if Ardeont had have tried to counter it with a completely different comp, Blank would have gone, okay, they've picked a comp to specifically counter the Bastion Orisa, let's not play that. And then suddenly they're back on the front foot. So Ardeont, by figuring out a way to deal with that composition without changing their own composition, essentially baited Blank into that losing situation.
Yeah, they laid out a trap, right? Blank thought they were the ones laying out the trap. They said, we're going to get King's Row. If they run this again, we're going to run the same thing again, and we're just going to win with it because it's such an unbeatable strat. And on paper, I would agree it is 100% unbeatable on paper, because what is Zaya Reinhardt meant to do against Bastion? Nothing. They have no options.
You can't kill the Bastion.
And in a straight-up tank-to-tank fight, a Bastion that melts tanks is always going to win for the team. But the execution from Ardeont was absolutely insane. And unfortunately, you got to go back to Gardens, because the ground fight was what the difference is. When you got the two tanks and two tanks head-to-head, it's the Ardeont two tanks winning nearly every single time. Which is why, even with the Bastion, Blank couldn't turn around.
And it's recognizing that they're able to do that, because you've got to respect as well. They're going up against Huwu as one of those tanks, literally the #1 tank in the tournament, right? Like, that's really brave to say our tanks can be your tanks in this situation, but it's also smart from Ardeont to identify that the comp isn't the Bastion, it's how they're able to use the Bastion. Yeah. You're right, compositionally, yeah, on paper, if the map was just this wide open space, except for the fact that Bastion can sit on high ground over here, and you can maybe put someone on high ground over here, yeah, the Bastion comp wins that every single time. But what they respect is how that composition is playing for the map, and the fact that it needs to cap the point, because that is where the crux isn't the Bastion, it's those tanks.
And unfortunately, I have to go and say it again, but if it was any other team, you'd expect Blank to have just won with that. Blank would have teared through them. Blank would have set this play up and just said, come deal with it.
Yeah.
The other teams wouldn't have been able to deal with it, but Ardeont just, they do it. Something special about this team and the way they adapt and the way they execute and the way they sort of change on the fly. And the fact that the metagaming and the mind games go so deep to say, okay, we're going to go to King's Row here, play the exact same comp, bait Blank into using that Bastion strat again, and then counter it with the comp that we lost against it with.
And I guarantee
it's on another level.
Yeah, I guarantee you they would have played that comp in their own scrims, as in the one with the Bastion, to figure out how exactly it works, that they can then identify how to deconstruct it. I mean, the practice has been clear from Ardeont here. Yep. The work they put in for this has been clear, and to me, that shows, I think, a very adequate amount of respect for Blank. They are respecting that the last time these teams met, it gave Ardeont some sleepless nights.
I think this is going to have to be the toughest loss so far for Blank. This map specifically, because that was, in their minds, and kind of in our minds, a lot of people's minds, on paper, once again, is an unbeatable strat. Against that specific comp that Ardeont ran, using the Bastion Orisa is pretty much unbeatable, except if you actually just did what Ardeont did there. But let's go and get a few thoughts from teams.
Defeating Ardeont is it's not impossible. It's very achievable. The second time we played them, we won Ilios, and I think we drew King's Row. Obviously, it comes down to RNG. We draw a map, right? And we just got a unlucky map for us. In regards to pressure, I guess the pressure is generally on them right now because they're obviously undefeated, and we've been in that position as well. Losing a map is really hard in that position.
저는 일단 차분하면 완벽한 팀 플레이가 되는데, 일단 흥분을 하면은 계속 제가 던지기 때문에 팀의 안 좋은 모습을 계속 보여가지고 저 때문에 경기가 힘들어진 적이 많아가지고 그 차분함을 좀 더 늘리면서 경기를 하고 있고요.
It's been better than last season because I've learned more, obviously, from World Cup and Season 1. Also, we can depend on my Widowmaker, when we need it.
저는 아디언트의 서브 딜러를 맡고 있는 어스터라고 합니다. 일단 대만에 와서 게임을 하게 됐는데 타 지역까지 와가지고 게임을 하는데 팬분들이 이렇게 신경 써주셔서 감사하고 결승전을 보러 와주시는 팬들 몇 분도 계신데 정말 감사드리고 더 노력하는 아디언트 되겠습니다. 이번 경기는 저희한테 되게 중요한 경기니까 꼭 우승하겠습니다.
Hello everyone, I'm IU from the Australian team Blank Esports. Thank you to all the fans who've just been supporting us, especially back at home in Australia. Been reading NZ Overwatch all the time, and yeah, there's just comments about the game, good or bad. At least you watched and try and support us. Just make sure you tune in for the playoffs. If you're here in Taiwan, just buy a ticket, hop in, get keen for the playoffs against Ardeont. I say we have a good chance against them.
And he mentioned something really interesting there. Blank have been in Ardeont's shoes here. The top of the first season of OPC, they went undefeated. They really, they were a top dog, right? It was on all these other teams to take them down. There was a target on the back of their heads. Someone hit that target. And then people kept hitting the target. And from there, it was Blank rebuilding themselves, getting back up to that point, and they finished runners-up, deservedly so. But here's the thing. The pressure may be on Ardeont here as the undefeated team. I Eat You Up may know what that feels like, but right now, the pressure is on Blank.
Exactly, and he said that already. The pressure was on Ardeont, but now the tables have turned. And with that 2-0 so far up into the lead for Ardeont, things are looking a little bit dire for Blank. And look, it's such a difficult place for Blank to be in. Like I said, King's Row was now the toughest loss because this was where Blank expected themselves to be able to win. This is when they expected to say, okay, we're going to be, they're doing exactly what we want. We're baiting them now, we're trapping them now, and the opposite happened. And that's got to give you a mental blow, which for a team like Blank that needed that mental uplift to even get themselves further and deeper into the series, they're going to have to depend on what is potentially going to have to be a full reverse sweep.
Exactly. So here's the thing. I mean, you can talk about the micro of Ardeont there and the specific way in which they were able to turn that map around from the last time these teams met to now. And yeah, that's worth commending. It totally is. But you've also got to commend the macro aspect of it, the way it affects the mentality. Heck, the fact that their response, their micro response was so good, they took a map that had gone to a tiebreaker last time these two teams had met to a map where they first held Blank. Like, that is a huge disparity there. And then on their own cap, they went from Blank nearly first holding them, which nearly happened last time they met, to them just capping out in that one fight. Protracted as it was just the one fight, and it was Ardeont in the driver's seat the whole way through.
And now I would like to see this go to a map 6 because I want to know what Ilios then looks like if Ardeont can make that sort of adaptation on a map like King's Row, where they were extremely behind, they were put in such an uncomfortable position. What then happens on the map you actually lost on? The map that Blank actually, you know, sort of made their mark against you, the second map loss of the entire season. And look, they may still only just finish the entire season on 2 map losses if Blank don't take a win now. If the winner of Hong Kong Attitude Flash Rules don't also take a win against Ardeont. But we're going to head into map 3 now. It's going to be Temple of Anubis, and we've already seen what Ardeont can pull out on this, and it's quite frankly just amazing.
No surprises whatsoever on this pick. Like, absolutely none. This is exactly the map you feel Ardeont should be taking this one to. They are phenomenal on this map. As it is, Blank are already weaker on Assault than on any other game mode. I know we say that like every single time this team plays, but that's because after all these matches this team has played, it's still true.
It's still relevant, which is
exactly
like, without wanting to beat a dead horse, it is actually just relevant.
Especially when you're 0-2 down and now you come into Assault. It means that you are likely to be 0-3 down. It means that you are likely to get taken to match point before you even get a chance to realistically take a map off. And that's the thing. We talk about if they have to win, they have to reverse sweep. Now, the one bone I will throw Blank here is last time they were in this specific situation, and I say very specific because it was against the semi-final against AHQ on the first day. They actually dropped control. Specifically, it was Ilios. That in itself was a huge shock. Then AHQ went on to win the next map, which I have a feeling may have even been King's Row. I may need someone to check that one for me, but at any rate, we're down those 2, then we were going into Assault, and we were saying the exact same thing we are saying right now. Blank are not favored on Assault. They don't necessarily look good here. We can expect AHQ to take this to match point. But that was the map that Blank won, and it was from there that they were able to take out AHQ in the first day of that semi-final, which they then went on to win on the second day. So, Blank, if you want to talk about mental fortitude, yes, this is Ardeont. Yes, this is a different team, but they have been here before, and they were able to turn it around.
They're going to have to draw on that energy now and draw on the experience of that previous playoff match to turn things around. The last time that we were on Temple of Anubis between Ardeont and Blank, it was 2-1 in favor of Ardeont. That means Blank didn't take B at all. And look, most teams, unfortunately, have not taken B against Ardeont, so it's not a mark necessarily against Blank, but it goes to show the strength that Ardeont come in for this match.
Well, I mean, let's even say, last time they played Assault, it was on Blank's map pick where they went to Volskaya, which is the strongest of their Assault maps, already their weakest game mode, and even that was a complete one-sided shutout. Same result, 2-1. Blank did not cap point B, so you've got to consider that's kind of a record that extends beyond Temple of Anubis. That's just these 2 teams on Assault. Just so happens we're on Temple of Anubis, Ardeont's best map on this mode.
We've already seen how Ardeont, by the way, Ardeont are defending first, so that's not something Ardeont usually play. They're more like an attacking team. They like to attack first, but here we go. And it's going to be Jeff back on the Sombra, Erster back on the Genji Classic Hits.
No Widowmaker here though from Blank, which is interesting. It's one of the maps where they do like that Widowmaker. So I think this is maybe them trying to, again, mind game Ardeont, who were maybe expecting a U-Ups Widowmaker instead onto this Roadhog and the Reaper. They've been able to take possession now of this room that Jeff would have otherwise liked to have control of with the Sombra.
Right, so this is a very, I want to use the phrase team fight here, but realistically it's just in-your-face kind of composition, right? Double shotgun is kind of like the term I have to use here, because it is Roadhog and it is Reaper, and so far, shotguns are effective.
Yeah, the zoning is really there, and again, with that possession of that room, they're struggling to get mileage out of Jeff. Ardeont nearly coming into the EMP just now, though, will almost certainly have to commit it. Those tanks are now basically just big health bars, but with Republic going down despite the Primal Rage, the DPS already being dead, there's just no one to capitalize on the EMP, which will now be down for the initial point B defense. Jeff as well looking to go down in the stagger kill here as they get the follow-up. DM does get one back, slows down Blank a touch for what will be the next fight, but DM himself went down to that same pulse bomb. This is now a cap for Blank, ultimate's charged up, ready to go for B.
And Gumbo was the only support that died there and only at the end, so you have to commend the healing play here, which keeps everyone alive. This composition works off the back of healing. They're only large health pools, just walking big health pools if the healing structure isn't there from the rest of the team, especially in an EMP environment as well. Now Ardeont, or rather Blank, going into B, they have to snowball this. That's their only position that they can sort of play off here. While Jeff doesn't have an EMP yet, if they can get 2 ticks here, this is when they're going to be in a great spot.
The truth is, though, they've got the ultimates to do it. The whole hog, though, is just getting completely blocked up by the defense matrix. So yeah, 1 ult less now going into this one. Dragonblade is a factor, sound barrier as well. Ardeont are starting to get their ultimates up, and they go aggressive into the side room. Double defensive ultimates from Blank with the conversion on Republic. They need more, though. That's going to be a lot more committed, but they lose one in the self-destruct, and Erster able to get aggressive anyway with the Dragonblade. Eats you up, got nothing with that Death Blossom, and Blank exhausting a chunk of those resources and ultimately getting repelled by what little Ardeont had to work with.
So once again, the adaptation is important here because Blank's composition entirely relies on the fact that they need to get on the camp, sit there and wait for Ardeont to come to them. That's how they won A. So you look at Ardeont's area control here, they dogpile you inside that side room, they don't even allow you to fight on the camp. Blank want to get to the camp, but they're forced to use all their ultimates before they even step foot on it. Huss uses the, the whole hog straight out of the door. Yep. Nothing happens out of that.
And now they can start getting this aggressive hold. This is exactly what they've done to Blank in the past. That is a great EMP with great follow-up to boot, and you've got to respect the ultimate cycling. I mean, the EMP alone winning that fight, and the fight before being won by only 2 ultimates, which were the exact right ultimates to commit to that confined space. Blank need to step it up here if they want to start out-rotating Ardeont.
That was an important recharge moment for Ardeont as well. Consider EMP like that nice battery. Chuck that battery back in a recharge, and suddenly everyone else gets their ultimates back up because everyone used it to win the last fight against Blank anyway. Blank's still on the back foot here. They got Trill and Hulu set up, but otherwise it's not quite enough, especially with Huss going down. They just have to fall back now.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard enough to fall back because they're already kind of on
if they can fall back.
That's the thing. They can't because, again, this is what Ardeont do, right? They select the timing perfectly, right? They know that that is the exact worst moment for Blank to try and turn tail and back out. That's the moment that Ardeont go. Blank aren't ready to commit. They can't back out. They just can't take that fight.
And note once again the area control from Ardeont. They're again forcing fights away from the camp. Blank want to be fighting on the camp. They want to be committing on the camp because then you're pressuring out the defense. Then you're threatening to get that tick, get that second tick and cap it out fully. But because Ardeont never let Blank touch it, it's just not the case.
Another change up as well. Huss now onto the Genji Erster opening pick. Instant Dragonblade out. Just swinging it around. He doesn't even need to get kills because the rest of his team is already following that one up as they pop Trill. The rest of Blank does at least get out this time, but that is still 1 ultimate for a whole fight win.
That was a very aggressive from Erster, but you know, in terms of the macro play there, it was even okay that he died because he already got 2 kills. Even if he dies, that 2-to-1 advantage multiplied by the fact that he's got the respawn advantage at the B site anyway means that Blank just simply cannot enter with a player deficit. They can never do that.
And then he didn't even die. And now once again, the ultimate rotation from Ardeont. DM's got this pulse bomb. He could use it to insta-give Trill here, but he knows he doesn't even need to. They've already got the fight. And if they kill you up, actually just shy of a gong there as RQT and Gunva respawn, but Blank in this whole time have only just started to get the rest of their ultimates online.
And this is the dismantling of Blank so far. 2 maps down the series. The B and the L are already gone. Right now it's just Ank Esports, and they're about to lose the rest of the letters too.
That's kind of how it feels. Like by the end, they'll just be K Esports, because they won't be good, they won't be bad, they'll just be K. That's what happens when you lose 4.
That was K. That was K.
That was K. Here's going to be another commit now from Ardeont. They're just looking for an EMP now going to be available. Blank need to find their way in. They need to find their way in quick before that EMP stops. Ultimate's too late. Gunva's dead. RQT to follow. They do at least get that ultimate out, so that is something. But now in this next fight, if they don't get in before that EMP, the same thing is going to keep happening to them, and they're never going to get a chance to commit these ults.
There's only 2 things here for Blank can do. 2 options to rely on. One, you have to out-rotate Ardeont. That's a very difficult thing thing to do. That requires you to preempt where you think Jeff's going to come from. Also, Jeff kind of scouts where you're going anyway, so he wants to play where you're going to play. And again, always forcing you away from the cap. Note that so far, Blank have not taken a single fight on the cap itself. The only cap presence they've gotten is like 15%, maybe 20% on the cap, and that's about it. No one's even touched it. Now, this is good rotation, and so far, they're doing a good job.
They managed to get him, but they still lose Huss in the movement. Again, the strength of Ardeont to commit at the right time. Transcendence out is a window they must convert on, but Michelle can throw out the self-destruct to preserve the mech. Animo can keep the health bars topped off while they just kind of wait for this EMP. That'll be the go button. Blank have to commit more if they want to start getting something in this fight, but they've not got much more to commit. They've got the same tools as Ardeont. It's going to be Erster committing that one first. Huss is still alive, but he just can't find a window in for the Dragon Blade. And Huss is the only one to survive when all is said and done, aside from Trill just limping away. Erster, look at that impact.
I didn't even get a chance to say what the second option for Blank was, but while Blank did actually take the first one, which was out-rotating Ardeont, they still lost members, which is a really big boon for Ardeont to take advantage of it. Now, Blank, the other thing that they can do, and maybe they don't have time for this now, is actually try and bait out this aggressive play from Ardeont, sort of disengage Ardeont when they want to go in, punish divers like Erster, punish divers like Jeff, get that early pick, get the sort of early player advantage, and then go in maybe 6v5, go in 6v4.
And a lot of that was Huss died in that rotation, but now with his Dragon Blade
Gotta get something out of
he's
this.
really got to get something. He's onto Erster, does stop him shy of the health pack, but they need way more than that, right? Because the respawns will just come in for Ardeont. But there's the pick on Animo. Jeff did get a nice hack onto Huss, but they didn't follow up on it. Now they're able to get some kills through. They needed D-Mech Michelle before he gets that self-destruct. They're getting the members as well that could capitalize on the EMP, which is smart target selection. Now they can maybe hunt for Jeff. Jeff himself, though, is going to make a point of hiding. Blanket last on the point. They need to at least get a third here to make this worthwhile, but ideally they need more. But they are getting more. The EMP comes out, but it's only Jeff and DM who could follow up. Erster only just rejoining the fight, but RQT was still able to get the sound barrier off, and Gunba is keeping control of the health pack that Ardeont want to fall back to. Self
4 seconds.
Gets 2! That's a huge turnaround point for Ardeont. What a great placement by Michelle, and at least the third came through for Blank, but they're going to get beaten back almost instantly afterwards. Even the Death Blossom not finding anything. The sound barrier was there, the damage was there as well, and the respawn advantage from Ardeont just proved to be too much for Blank to overcome.
And now in the final moments of this, it's got to be Blank trying to get anybody on for the further contest they can, but Ardeont, they're snowballing this now. They have this under control, and suddenly the tables get turned again for Blank. The best fight they've had so far, when they finally do out-rotate Ardeont, they finally do get onto the cap for the second time. Ultimates come into play, it's not quite enough, and Blank, that was probably still a decent result considering how poorly the first sort of, I don't even know what was it, like 4 minutes, 5 minutes of that B attack went.
Even longer, right? When you consider how quick their point A actually was, it was a slow first push, but it was still in that first push. But at any rate, you've just got to respect there with Ardeont how deep their pockets are, how many win conditions they were able to fall back on. Okay, that one didn't work, now we've got this one instead because we've set ourselves up for that. Like, they've got it's like Batman, right? They've got a plan A and a plan B and a plan C, and then their plan D is basically you've exhausted so many resources getting past plans A, B, and C that we've just got more off that respawn advantage. And that's what that was. They had the EMP, they just barely had DM to help close out on it, and they couldn't quite get that, and you sort of go, okay, Blank are going to get another third. But no, because they've still got the self-destruct from Michelle. That was plan C. We didn't even get to see plan D.
The other problem is that because Blank didn't get an early tick, they didn't get that early third at any stage, or even the second third, there was so much buffer space for Ardeont to work with. Consider that even if you get a full team wipe against a B team, or rather a defending team onto B on any assault map, they can stall for the first 2/3, let you cap out 66%, and guarantee themselves a full wave of respawns. If you cannot deal with that second wave of respawns, you're just gonna lose. And the thing is, for Ardeont, because it was starting at 0%, they could even let 66% go, but that wasn't even the case. They only let 30-something go.
And that's the thing, I mean, you've got to consider Blank, who had that huge ultimate advantage, were like in the exact right position to snowball point B. Weren't able to get that initial third off a snowball, and then spent the rest of their time recovering to the point where they could get their first third.
So I like this from Blank now onto their A defense, because what essentially this kind of does for them is waste a lot of Ardeont's time. This is you know, it has to be a slow approach here. You can maybe expect Ardeont to still get this on their first attempt. That's not, you know, that's not something that you have to forget here. But the fact is, even if Ardeont do adapt properly and get this, a lot of time goes off the clock.
They are making good moves, though, already, just trying to pressure out the point itself. Nearly have a third, and that kind of means Blank may end up in a position where they have to actually commit to the ground game. That's very much not what they want to do, but Trill kind of has to. Now on the low ground, gets pressured out. Erster headshotting his counterpart has got to be the swing point of that fight, as Blank just get deconstructed on the point. Gong sounds. Ardeont gonna get a, don't quite have the resources to snowball B yet. Blank do still have some of their own. They have to change up their comp though, and they're not gonna have the CMP in time.
And Blank are changing up their comp in a really big way. Nearly every single member swapped there with the exception of Huwu and RQT, so it's basically a full reset for ultimates. That puts Ardeont even further ahead. Before, you have a situation where Ardeont fail this attack, Blank get their ultimates for the second defense. That then snowballs their own defense, but that's not even the case with Blank. Ardeont essentially get 2 pushes, 2 attempts for free, and they might not even need it.
They can kind of spawn camp here. Like, that's what DM started doing. Pulse bomb to go out just to pressure Trill. He has to jump away from that, which means also away from his teammates. Jeff already has a Transcendence to keep them safe on this point, to give them the legs they need in this fight. Still no EMP from Gun, but only just about to get it up. He's going to go down before that can happen. DM just has such control over the side that Blank want to try and reinforce from. Going to come dashing out here is Trill, swapping to the Doomfist just to keep boots on the point, but they can't even keep it alive. And you talk about deconstruction. You want to see the dominance of Ardeont? You just saw it.
Well, the A is gone now, so it's just Inc Esports.
Just down to Inc, and there's only an N left before they just K. They need to find a way to turn it back around, start getting some letters back on the name.
I know, that's a critical thing here. What would be poetic is if actually they had 4 letters in that name, then it would be poetic.
Yeah. Like
so with five, we've got to go to best of 9.
Yeah, you'd fully pick it apart.
Yeah.
Well,
win 5 maps out of 9.
I didn't have way too many letters for that. Like, that would be an
But that's what it feels like. It feels like they got so many letters. It feels like it's so hard. Look, they
got the plan A, the plan R, the plan D.
The name might as well be Flashwolves in this case. There's just so many letters to go through.
I think Hong Kong Attitude has the longest name in the tournament, actually. Like, that would be an absurdly long series. But, I mean, to speak to this series, which is starting to become a very short series, it's now at match point with Ardeont also picking up Assault, very much the expected result. But again, we had to say Blank were on the back foot after losing Hybrid. That's really just come to fruition now. They only have one last chance to turn it back around.
So we did talk about the fact that it was a successful A attack from Blank. It's interesting to note exactly how they did that. So game plan here for Blank with the composition, double shotguns, is to get your bodies onto the cap itself, force Ardeont to come to you, and when they do, they're playing directly close range into those shotguns, especially with guys like Ursa, especially guys with DM who need to be very close to you to be effective. That's a very dangerous place for them to be standing. And now Blank, this composition and the strategy starts to really work for them. And note, both RQT and Gumbo stay alive for a long duration here, especially RQT that doesn't die at all. This is what enables the tank to get their job done.
You've got to talk about how this comp works as well, because there are 2 potential moments where it can lose, right? The first is when they're setting up to move into that side room so that they can set up for the point. That's the position where Ardeont will often commit and pick off a member so they have a numbers advantage and the composition can't quite do what it needs to. Blank were able to steer past that. That was good. The second point of potential failure is when it has to commit to the point itself. Now, that's the point where that composition is more favored, like you were saying. But even then, when you're against Ardeont, in a way, you're never truly favored. So you've also got to credit Blank for setting up that play and then also executing on that play back to back. Because a lot of teams would actually fail on one or the other of those moments and have to give it a couple of goes before they were able to get it done properly. Blank doing that on one push is actually kind of a testament to their own strength, despite still losing the map.
So it's interesting to note that Blank, twice on both their attack and defense, had to have a big compositional swap. You almost consider what if Blank actually, no, I'm wrong about that, because on their attack, they didn't change the composition until after they lost it. So they went in and tried to snowball first, and they had some ults to do that. Because Ardeont were able to play the fight in territories that were favoring them, i.e. not in the cap itself. You had an early whole hog out from Huss, didn't get the job done. Other ultimates as well, didn't really get anything done. And then suddenly the remaining members that were still alive on Blank, they couldn't even use their ultimates. 5-6 minutes pass of just Blank not even making it past the front gate, but eventually you see the adaptation. There are some signs of life there, where for Blank, they're able to adapt. And look, one of the options for Blank to take was to out-rotate the defensive attack. It seems like a defensive attack, right? It's a very apt way to put it, from Ardeont, and they did exactly that, and they got their feet on the cap itself. But have they been doing that right from the start?
Yeah.
You might have seen a point or two taken away.
So that's the thing that's kind of worth saying here. The credit you've got to give Blank is that they are able to make these moves and execute these things properly in certain moments, because they are at moments where a lot of teams wouldn't be able to against Ardeont. Indeed, that is part of why Ardeont are currently undefeated in terms of match wins and have only lost those 2 maps, is because of the sheer number of teams in this tournament that struggle to execute against Ardeont when it counts. No matter how good every other part of the setup is, it's often the execution where Ardeont are still able to come out ahead and outplay you. So Blank being able to do that, even in certain isolated pockets, is still a worthwhile thing to mention in and of itself. It is indeed why they are in this playoffs. Unfortunately though, it seems that Ardeont have been able to push themselves one step ahead again to go from actually dropping maps to Blank and going to that tiebreaker on King's Row the last time they met, to now being able to keep a lid on Blank, as
Let's
it
take a
were.
look at the replays now as we head into B itself. And this is going to be when Blank come with 6 ultimates. Note that when you come in as an attack with 6 ultimates, this is your maximum power level as a team. If you do not win off this kind of attack, you are simply not going to win in basically any other situation. The EMP down from Jeff is absolutely perfect. It caught just about everybody. Suddenly those 6 ultimates don't even matter anymore, and a huge cleanup ensues.
And they're constantly doing it at the exact right moment as well. I mentioned it on a different push, but this is functionally the same thing. This is why Ardeont are able to get such cheap fights. It's not that they're just like this amazing team that doesn't need anything to win a fight. You know, they only need like 1 ultimate where other teams need 3. It's not like that. It's where they choose to take the fight, and it is them choosing to take the fight. They were doing this to Flash Wolves as well when they met at the very end of the regular season. What they do is they pick you at the worst possible moment while you're setting up. You aren't quite ready to fight because you're not set up yet, but you're in too deep to safely retreat. And that's the moment Ardeont go. If you can steer through that, by the way, the reason other teams don't do that is that's still also a risky moment for Ardeont to go, because it's where you risk overextending the most. But that's the cleanliness of this team, that they can go in at that moment and not lose any members.
Which is what the second option for Blank was, to make them overextend, to disengage and pick off those aggressive players. But the first option is usually better in the scenario, which is to out-rotate Ardeont. And kind of a 2-part scenario, because you sort of mentioned that the setup phase was quite weak for Blank, and that is absolutely true. And Ardeont do take advantage of that, but there's two sort of sides to that. One is the fact that Ardeont can see the advantage, can see the opportunity, and do take it. B is the fact that Blank are too slow. So actually, when Blank sped up their setup, when Blank went in quicker, they had much better success. Take a look at the replay now, and an example of what it looks like when Blank do execute.
And this was really down to the wire. Like, before this, that actually failed a push. They had lost Huss in the setup here. So look at this.
Yeah. The most important thing here to note was that Jeff and Erster went the wrong way. So this is talking about out-rotation here. Jeff was expecting Blank to come out of the right side. Blank came out of this left side, got themselves immediately on the cap. 2 kills right off the bat. This is the best start that Blank could have hoped for.
And you've got to respect the positioning as well, because Huss picked Erster as he was about to have fallen back to the health pack below the bridge there. Then they immediately set Gunba in that same position to try and pick off any other members that attempted to fall back to it. That was how they were able to get the maximum advantage out of out-rotating. When you're out-rotated, you want to fall back to anything you have maybe set up, be it the point, hacked health packs, heck, even back to the spawn room, and they're just cycling these ultimates. This, however, is the turning point for Ardeont.
Yeah, and it has to be said here that Ardeont getting to this phase is really important. What you have to remember is Ardeont here can actually afford to give up 2 ticks. They can afford to come back in and allow Gamba and the rest of his team from the Blank side to get a lot of cap in before the full wave response. When it does happen, they had a couple ults, and one of them was EMP that was used a little bit early, didn't quite get anything done there. The second one was Michelle's self-destruct here, which does get a lot of job done. And actually the thing to remember as well, Blank's bubble from Trill there, getting destroyed in time for Trill himself to die to it.
And that's a huge thing as well. If that Winston bubble has 1 HP left, it blocks the whole self-destruct. You've got to destroy it. There's no 2 ways about that. And the fact that the members that died specifically were Eat You Up and Huss meant it didn't even matter. And by the way, Huru lost the mech as well, so he had to try and get that back in time, which he did, but even then, you're in this situation where, sure, you've got the healers. Technically, you've got Gunba, who is DPS in the situation. but you don't actually have the resources to capitalize off anything, right? The only tank left to make space for you is Trill. The only healer there who is able to top you off is the Lucio, and that's only going to pay off if you've got so much damage that you can't die, right? Because Lucio, when is the solo healer, if you're all taking a bit too much damage, especially the tanks, he just can't keep pace with the duo healer from the enemy team. So it's this really all or nothing, indeed all in, as it were, composition to try and push it at the end there.
And you kind of want to see Blank make that play a little bit early, because they did that right in the final moments. It was about to hit overtime, 1 minute remaining, but they needed that speed for the other 5 minutes of gameplay that they've kind of failed on, because those other 5 minutes is what really cost Blank. As already mentioned, but if Blank made that kind of play, got themselves a 1/3, they got 34%.1, I believe, which is enough, because then you can come back the next time, get your next 33% or whatever it is, and then suddenly really push Ardeont out. The reason Ardeont can get so much mileage is due to the fact that they have so much buffer space to work with, to say, okay, we can wait for respawners because we have the cap to give away.
But that's the thing as well with Ardeont, is how well they're able to control those fights really before they break out. In order for Blank to play for thirds, they need to get 3 successful fights. And the reality is, even with all that time on the clock, like even if only 1 out of every 3 fights against Ardeont is successful, you're just not going to get enough of them to get 3 thirds if you're only getting a third each time. Really, the way, the path for victory there for Blank would have been getting a snowball push, getting at least a third off that, getting another third somewhere in the mix, and then still getting that third towards the end.
Yeah, well, pretty much at the end of the day for Blank, they had some good adaptations towards the end, but you wanted to see them a little bit earlier. From Ardeont, this was kind of an expected win in terms of game modes. Look, we have to go back to the fact that I think it was always going to be very difficult for Blank to come in. You sort of brought up the previous playoffs with AHQ, and in this kind of position, Blank did come back. Now they are seriously down to 0-3 at the match point for Ardeont, and the only way they can come back has to be that reverse sweep, and that's going to be an incredibly difficult task for Blank to do. And if they haven't taken a map of Ardeont now, it's very difficult to say if they can do so moving forward. Escort is much better for them than Assault, but time is very steadily running out.
It's a really tricky situation, right? I mean, it feels kind of obvious to say it. Take a look at one last replay before we move in towards Escort, and this is ultimately where Ardeont start to set themselves up. So this is a nice setup by Blank here. I do respect what they're trying to do, but it's also handled very nicely by Ardeont.
So this is intended to, I guess, waste a lot of Ardeont's time, and you have to be quite mindful of the setup play from Blank here. A lot of shields to play with, a lot of sort of high ground control, but Ardeont kind of play it from multiple angles, which makes it difficult for the rest of the Blank squad to take advantage here. The turret can only target one player. Edip can only target one player. Everybody's kind of targeting different players here as well. Orisa can't really look in too many places at the same time. When you have Ursa at the front gate sniping, when you have the other members just sort of littered across the point itself, by the way, you've cap pressure. By the way, you're forcing Blank to eventually come down and meet you on the cap when all of their members are actually on high ground, and they want to stay on the high ground.
And that's what really swung it, right, was eventually being able to force Blank onto the low ground. And it's kind of similar to what they did on King's Row in a sense, where the setup for Blank was basically creating a space where Ardeont didn't want to fight. So what Ardeont actually did is they identified the exact same for Blank. They identified a space where Blank didn't want to fight. And that space was with Trill on the point, because the moment he was on the point, A, he could get surrounded by Ardeont, B, if he wanted to have some kind of survivability, he had to put his shield on the point, which took it away from the Tourbillon turret, and also from Eat You Up, which was, C, what opened up Erster now to start doing what he wanted to do on that Widowmaker, able to get the headshot and Eat You Up, able to get picks on all these other members as well. So they really, really took what little they could get based off what Blank was doing to bust that fight wide open.
And then you go into B as well, right, where Blank kind of have to go for a full reset. Well, they don't have to go for a full reset, but they chose for a full reset there. And the interesting thing to note is, and we didn't get to see this, but if it sort of was handled in such a way that Ardeont weren't able to get on their first attempt, and Blank successfully held for one fight, normally, if you kept your composition, that means you can then get the ults to fight the second fight in your favor in the second fight. But because you did a full reset, actually that second fight that Ardeont come in, they're still favored. So Blank don't get into an advantageous position until the third fight. And by the time you get to the third fight, I mean, the attack would have done some real serious damage to you already. In this
Yeah.
case, they did because they won.
It's the kind of ultimates as well that were quite difficult to fight through potentially. You've got things like a Molten Core, you've got things like a Supercharger, things that a B-side defense loves because you dig in your heels and you fight. Let's take a look at the final fight though for Blank, where unfortunately they weren't able to dig in their heels. Huss went down early, wasn't quite able to isolate any members with the Ice Wall, wasn't able to save himself either. Trill is a little split because he's still around this bottom side, and by the time Blank are all in position to commit for the fight, they're actually already at a numbers deficit.
There actually was a winnable situation here for Blank. You have to consider that Erston needs the outdoor space to fight. So if Ardeont get on the cap itself, that's when Urst is effective. But if Blank play the same style that Ardeont did, because mind you, Ardeont came out that side room on the right side, which is fully indoors, Ursa can't go on there. Ursa can't impact the fight from inside there either. So if Blank decide to dogpile on top of Ardeont inside that side room, the same way that Ardeont did to them on their defense, that would have been Blank's entry as well. Also, you have someone like a Mei, Huss playing the Mei there, which would have been quite effective in close quarters. If you played to fight in close quarters, you would have stopped Ardeont from getting on the cap. You would have stopped Ursa from being effective. That's a 6v5 without even killing the guy.
But here's the issue, is Blank had already swapped up all of these things. They were trying to get health pack control, trying to at least set up for fighting on the point. They weren't in a good enough position to even scout out that movement to then take advantage of it. And even if they hadn't quite scouted it out, they still wouldn't have been in position to take advantage.
They needed to be preemptive. I think for Blank, the move here is to be preempting, okay, this is what we might expect, scout it early. And the mistake from Ardeont is actually that Ardeont decided to push the closed room into the outdoor space on Defender's left side. I think Ardeont should have pushed the left side, which would have guaranteed an outdoor fight for Ursa to be effective. But still, you know, it works at the end of the day because the defending team didn't really kind of punish what you were doing because there was a window of opportunity that Blank could have taken.
Exactly, but speaking of windows of opportunity, those windows now fast closing as it is match point in favor of Ardeont. Blank do get the escort pick. Last chance to turn it around.
All right, well, let's go ahead and eat you up one more time, and when we come back, OPC Season 2 continues.
哦，有一个哥哥，就
今天只有一个三明治，
三明治
会先给 RTP。
三明治是什么？
The only thing that you have, the only food that we have.
Ah.
Drew or Daniel?
Daniel。啊，就应该也是 true。喂，这是什么？最后一个吗？
答对了。
以为是吗？一张。
答错了，答案是一张饮食。
一张哦。哇 ，Dude, sounded so right, man.
请跟我念一次绕口令。
这是我红鲤鱼，雨绿雨驴，
红鲤鱼，雨丽鱼，红鲤鱼，雨丽鲤鱼鲤鱼，红鲤鱼，鲤鱼鲤鱼鲤鱼。
好。
用中文谢谢你们看我们比赛，怎么讲？虽然我们现在是第4名，我觉得还有时间，你们会进步呀，谢谢你们，拜拜。
2 playoffs so far. We're into the first semi-final between Ardeont and Blank Esports. It's a 3-0 lead for Ardeont so far. Things are looking a little bit dim, a little bit dire for Blank, but at least right now in the East Stadium, people are looking still pretty cheerful.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's a festive night, as it were. There's that third cosplayer that we hadn't actually seen yet, the Diva cosplayer. But look, Blank, they've got their backs up against the wall now. There's no two ways about that. This is also a situation from which they've never truly been able to turn it around, nor is it a situation from which Ardeont have been turned around upon. But they do at least get their map pick now. Maybe, just maybe, this is the position where Blank can start making something happen.
I feel like this is a good place for Ardeont to be in, especially if you consider that technically, I'm going to say that with this cosplay, she's got to be an Ardeont fan. Like, there's no way, no way you're not an Ardeont fan if you got the, this particular skin on.
Yeah, you go like with the semi-final with the one Korean team in the tournament, cosplaying as the one Korean hero in the game. I mean,
by default.
It practically writes itself. Like, even if actually she's a Blank supporter, she's supporting Ardeont.
Well, she should have come in either Junkrat or Roadhog costume.
Yeah. Right. I don't know about Roadhog. We still don't quite know with Roadhog. Like, there's still a chance he's maybe from New Zealand.
Yeah, well, who was, so that's fine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure, actually, yeah. And unfortunately, he doesn't play the Roadhog. But, like, Junkrat, he's definitely Australian.
I'll tell you what, if, I know Huss play the Roadhog, but as a flex tank player, it's definitely got to be within that hero.
Oh, it's within the realm of possibility, surely. Funny enough, he does play the Diva when they have the Diva. So, like,
funnily enough.
Well, like, if we're talking about, like, who the Diva cosplay is supporting, like, if we want to take the stretch with Huwu there, I mean, like, maybe it's the Diva cosplay actually supports him inadvertently. But, look, support aside, if you do support Blank, like, now's the time to give them the energy, right? Like I said, man, back up against the wall. I like to use the phrase down but not out, but right now that not out does feel like a bit of a technicality. They do get to go to Escort. They are solid on this map mode. However, the last time they played it against Ardeont, they did lose it, and Ardeont have only gone to this map mode twice. This is not a place you will be able to do research against this team.
So, to sort of recap what happened that last time, it was Dorado and 2-0 for Ardeont, which means Blank didn't cap out the first point. They didn't get past A. But actually, Ardeont didn't get past C. They couldn't fully cap out the map. I remember Ardeont getting very close to nearly capping up, but Blank were able to full hold. So that still speaks to Blank's ability, but their attack needs to be relooked at here. And that's only assuming we're going back to Dorado. It could be any other map.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing to note here is that we haven't seen any other Escort from Ardeont so far. It's been Dorado twice, because they've only ever been to Escort twice.
And that's the interesting thing, is actually often when Blank have ended up on a map 4 during the regular season, which has been a lot because of how often they drop Escort, when it's been their pick, they've tended to favor going to Dorado. Yeah. We've seen them going to other places as well, but they like Dorado. Ardeont also evidently like Dorado to an extent, because also the last time these two teams met, it was actually Ardeont who had that map 4 pick, and they were the ones who opted into Dorado, which they then won. Again, you've got to go back to this notion of you just can't really do research if you're Blank looking into this situation, which is unfortunate because you were always going to go to this 4th one with it being a best of 7. The other questions were going to be beyond that, but here it is, map pick. It's going to be Route 66.
And interestingly enough, this is the map that they eliminated AHQ on, so it's I guess, also does make sense as the other map choice pick for Blank. The last one would have been Gibraltar as well, but it's going to be Route 66 instead. And they, I guess, famously in that last matchup against AHQ were able to fully hold AHQ on Cap 8.
And it was a really intense close as well. I mean, with how far forward they held AHQ, AHQ were faced with an almost impossible task on their own defense as well. So, I mean, you've got to consider that that is the situation Blank can put teams in. Now, look, Ardeont are a great team, but I don't even think they would have won in that situation where AHQ lost. That's what Blank are looking to set up here. This is a really violent kind of handshake between these two guys. Normally they just shake hands, but now they're just playing slaps.
They've progressed. I mean, this is the evolution of Blank. That's
RQT's mouse hand. Is that not painful?
That's the next, well, it's also Huss's movement hand.
Yeah, like, are they going to regret that during the game?
So what it's going to be is RQT can't aim and Huss can't move.
Well, it's okay, because RQT's playing Lucio. He doesn't need to aim.
Well, have you seen Animo? No.
The number of headshots that man gets.
Actually, it's funny we sort of bring that up because RQT, if you go back to Night Market now, when they beat Ardeont on the very first map of this evening, it was RQT that got some opening picks on the Lucio itself. So,
funnily enough, yeah. But at any rate, that was a long time ago. Now it kind of feels like, but at the same time, a bit of a short time. Because that was only 3 maps ago, and it was 3 maps that Ardeont went on to win. So now, last chance for Blank to return to the grand finals, where they maybe get a shot to best their season 1 result. It would have to be the beginning of a reverse sweep if we get that far. It's going to be Route 66 where it is all going to happen, where it is now make or break for this team.
This is a, because they had such a good run against AHQ here, you were kind of expecting a bit of the repeated magic for Blank here. And if they're gonna go with the sort of with a bang as well, and a blaze of glory, if you will. So
yeah, with a bang, don't shoot blanks.
I've been trying to find a good time to say that don't shoot blanks.
But you know what? I stole it. I took it right off you.
But it's actually, I didn't want to be that harsh. So that's what it was for my angle.
Well, I suppose that's where we are. But it's already been a pretty intense series, all told, and it's going to be one of those situations, I feel like no matter which way it goes, where we're going to say the scoreline does not tell the whole story, even if it is a reverse sweep in the end. But at the end of the day, it is still Ardeont only looking to close out 1 more map to punch their ticket to the finals, where they finally get to prove that they are the best team in OPC.
So Blank can get quite aggressive here if they'd like to, and they kind of should, considering that Ursa is playing the Widowmaker. Trill already looked like he wants to go on, but if you're sort of paying attention to Republic's position there, he was able to meet Trill where Trill wanted to get aggressive.
And this is a roundabout where Blank were able to hold out AHQ, but they were getting much earlier picks. And already it's Ardeont putting on the pressure now, as Trill having to get aggressive to make space, loses his life for it, and then pressured out Gunba on the side as well. He does at least pick off DM, but too low. Dies the moment he pokes his little robotic head out, and Ursa just has so much free reign over this area. Blank as well are getting staggered out now. RQT dying very late compared to the rest of this team. Blank, they will be able to regroup for one last defense.
It feels like Blank were giving a little bit too much respect to Ardeont there. Ursa didn't get too many opening picks. He got the picks when the fight actually started. So Blank, they looked like they were waiting for the EMP from Huss, but actually if you want to build EMP quickly, you got to get aggressive so you can start healing on the health packs, and then you get the EMP.
Man, that is a great position. The Pulse Bomb does end up getting eaten by the defense matrix, but in that moment of turning around, Hubu takes a chunk of damage. They can't quite capitalize off this EMP as Hubu demeched, and wow, they press the go button. Republic's the one doing the work in that one, actually. And they've still got all the sightlines covered out by Ursa. Picks up, beat you up on the back end for good measure, and that is Ardeont very handily in control of the fight, totally reading where Blank were going to come in from for that final contest.
Even Trill right at the end there with the helicopter Winston, nothing that he can really do about that situation. Ardeont kind of just cruise on through for the most part onto this A. Ursa can stay on the Widowmaker as well. It's still going to have a lot of impact on B, and you're still waiting for Blank to really strike there. The EMP was mentioned. You said it came out, and it did come out, but not enough impact. You saw that Republic responded so well to it.
Now, into the street space. Already Ardeont have really set themselves up aggressively here with where they've got this Widowmaker. Just again, looking to get these trickle picks, and with that ultimate out, see if you can get this headshot. Oh my goodness, that's a good one to open it out.
That's just, like a wait and play kind of thing. It's just, I see Gunba, he's going to walk into the crosshair, and he walks into the crosshair now. The rest of the cleanup comes through, and both of Blank's supports are both down now. Could you actually use the sound barrier?
Yeah.
I don't know.
They kind of had to commit to the fight, so you can at least understand that from that perspective. They had already spent so much time setting up. It's kind of that situation where they were in too deep to really pull out, even though they lost Gunba. But I mean, it's almost like they weren't ready for Ursa to have that sort of sightline, even though they knew he'd used the ultimate.
And the problem for Blank is because they lost Gunba, that's Transcendence off the table. And then RQT tries to save the day with Sound Barrier. That's Sound Barrier off the table. Blank can still really go in here, and they're going to have to go in here. They got a lot of tools, even though the Sound Barrier is off. But you can expect, if Blank's going to come in for any fight and make a win out of it, it's got to be here.
They've got the ultimate still though, Ardeont. Pulse Bomb doesn't quite connect from either of these two traces. They need to find their other way in now as Republic's actually getting pressured out despite being able to use the Primal Rage, but not dead. That's key. What is also key though is Eat You Up taking out his counterpart, looking to get the hack onto Michelle. Does get the self-destruct off in time, and he doesn't get anything for it though as Huwu stops him remeching, and that is at least the beginnings of a defense for Blank.
And Blank's still holding to the EMP, so they can find a better play here. They didn't have to use the EMP in the previous fight. They got away with just using the Transcendence despite Eat You Up missing that Pulse Bomb. Now you're in a space where Blank can finally stabilize. They can actually take good fights, preferable fights.
And they actually got quite a lot of ultimates out of Ardeont. Here now is going to be the Widow ultimate again from Erster. This time though it doesn't get to be quite as effective. The main thing will be able to spot out Huss as he looks for this EMP angle.
Still looking. You gotta look and find it a little bit quicker now because Eat Up going down suddenly turns this into a 5-6, and it's looking a little bit worse.
Very much worse as they lose Gunba in the mix. Not that he had a Transcendence, mind you, but taking that healer off the table, now RQT too, and Huss, because he wasn't able to get that EMP off early, because he couldn't move in safely because of the Widowmaker ultimate, ends up not being able to commit it at all, and the other members of Blank, with the ultimates they did commit, with the Primal Rage that they threw in, still weren't able to get any conversion in their own right. Now they're just kind of stalling, kind of playing for time here. They could still get an ultimate defense on this third point, but it's got to be now on the third point or bust.
The penalty here is that you lose B for it. It's just it comes down to indecisiveness for Blank, right? Because they had the play there. They had the play, they just needed to commit, and now Huss can't use the EMP again. There should be pre-push until Huss actually comes back to life, and then Blank got to strike again. You sort of mentioned this earlier on the Temple of Anubis, but the setup phase has been Blank's weakest moment. And right now, they're in the setup phase. Can they actually get out of this and make a play?
That was all game sense from DM. They hadn't actually seen Huss. He'd only heard a Sombra around the corner. What a pulse bomb. Huss though has respawned. The payload's moved a bit, but now Blank get to dig in the heels and fight. The Transcendence from Jeff though, making it hard to do so. And their sound barrier's already run out. Now Animo can still commit his if they need. And Huss is still holding on to this EMP as well. How long will they hold on to this resource for? Self-destruct from Huwu doesn't quite find enough. Michelle on the other hand does. And again it's Blank constantly on the back foot. Even starting to trickle in ultimates now as the EMP goes out. But there isn't enough members alive to follow up on it. It was only Huss and Huwu there who could actually do anything with that. And now, even with the cap not being threatened yet, Blank is still just throwing ultimates and throwing bodies at the cart.
I think at the start of this, when you had a situation where Blank were able to win without the EMP, that's a good time to withhold the EMP. But when you start moving forward and you actually need the EMP to be used, it's one of the faster charging ultimates in the game. So to actually not use it is a big detriment.
Now they're just looking to find some other way onto this Huss, onto Genji. They need to dislodge Erster. Sound barrier out for Ardeont. They're reading the aggress. Good pick on Gunba. That's one of the few ultimates they had, and Eat You Up as well. And Ardeont just still not really being stopped here. Blank just can't quite muster this defense as Ardeont just pick them apart every time they go in. They didn't even have ultimates at the top of that fight, and they still just got all the kills.
It's the final moments here. You have a Transcendence, so you can expect stall to come out. RQT on the main as well. Again,
now.
You can expect the stall, but where's win condition? You have to get players, and DM starts that run now.
Yeah, down to his own pulse bomb there, but they immediately get Trill anyway, have gone even. Now with Eat You Up as well, they get to commit the self-destruct from Michelle. Not quite getting anything for it, but Huwu needs to get a big response because they lost other members during that anyway. Transcendence from Jeff. No one's dying here. RQT can at least stall for a while, but they've got to do something with that while. They've made all these change-ups, trying to get all these other picks, trying to get all these other stall tools, but they're just not even getting anything in response here as Ardeont continuing to dismantle Blank. And with 45 seconds left, will secure the third cap.
And it really did seem that ever since Blank had that one stabilization fight onto B, they won that fight, didn't have to use the EMP. Every single fight after that was a bit of a disaster. It kept looking like the same scenario unfolding. Groundhog Day for Blank. They wanted to go for the set. They're saying, okay, this is going to be our play here. We're going to attack them here. We're going to go in. The only thing they were missing was to go in with the EMP. Multiple times, it was a scenario where it just didn't look like a good EMP. It just didn't look like the right position to do it. And that's a two-part thing. One is the fact that Huss was unable to find the right the right situation, the right area to use it. And the second was the fact that Ardeont knew it was coming, and they played around it, played against it very well. They split themselves up, but were still impactful. And that meant it was very difficult that you used EMP. And when it finally was used, it just didn't have effect.
To kind of reground this team here, Blank Esports. I mean, this is really... This is that down but not out, but only by technicality. You compare this to Route 66 versus AHQ, where they were able to hold in front of big Earls. AHQ didn't even get a first point cap. You compare it to their last Escort showing against Ardeont, they were able to hold before that third point cap came in. Very different to holding before the first point, but still a hold. This is neither of those situations. This is now Blank must cap, must take it to Time Bank, must win Time Bank, and still have to win 3 more maps to turn it back around.
And for what it's worth, Ardeont only camped with 45 seconds remaining there, so Blank, despite not getting the full hold, stalled out long enough, kept the fights going long enough, had that one fight win in the middle as well to really slow down that cart. For objective time, that's still a really good performance from Blank, even though they were constantly behind.
All Ardeont need is 1 point. Any point will do on this map to dig in their heels and fight. If they can hold out, doesn't matter where, as long as Blank don't cap, Ardeont will go to the grand finals. That is what they've been working for this whole season.
This is where you're going to see as well Ardeont play their own Sombra on the defense on cap A, and where and how exactly will they actually execute this, because already Jeff is nearly on the EMP. Republic goes down, but
that's big.
You can expect Ardeont to turn this around now that Jeff can go in.
They are a little bit split up though, having to pull back to separate clusters of health packs, but getting to pick on Gunba and Trill as well means Michelle losing the mech, it's just not even a big deal. They were able to convert off that EMP as needed, but Huss has something else to say about it. Need to get Erster, gets him with the deflect there, nicely handled. They lose some members to the EMP, they did have to commit the Dragon Blade, but Blank haven't actually been stopped yet.
Ooh. A solo kill from Eat Up and Redeem as well is going to slow down Ardeont significantly as they look for the re-engage. This time though, it's Blank very far ahead in terms of ultimates. You have Eat Up and DM kind of matched here, but for everyone else, expect Gumber and RQD to reach their support ultimates first. So Ardeont, they're going to come into this, but without an EMP.
And they're also not able to get to those hacked health packs of theirs. They're on the other side of this fight right now. Jeff has to work overtime to charge that up. Oh, I know, eat you up. Kind of walks into his own pulse storm there, but he at least DMX Michelle. That was the target for that one. Blank committing what ultimates they've got, Transcendence as well now, but the EMP has been able to get up now from Ardeont. That could be the turning point for them. They need to get some mileage out of these other ults. EU Up does get to rejoin the fight, self-destruct into this confined space, zones Ardeont out, but no kills, nor have they been able to capitalize on that zoning. They trade 1 for 1 as the EMP comes out, but Erster is the one who truly capitalizes, getting the 2 in the mix. There's Blank now getting properly repelled, properly routed, and are gonna need to find another way to get this payload back underway.
And no deflect that time from Huss onto Erster, and Erster got a lot of work done with that Death Blossom. You also got to commend the micro play there from Jeff, because Jeff forced the Transcendence out of Gumba at an inopportune time for Blank. You could tell that Blank didn't want to layer their supports together, but they had to layer Sound Barrier on top of the Transcendence, or rather the other way around, because Gumba was very concerned about the fact that the EMP was about to come out. He would have probably died, the EMP would have shut down the Sound Barrier, and that would have been a very sour fight for Blank. But actually, it ended up being a sour fight for Blank anyway.
Again, you talk about Blank need to find a way in. It's going to be Trill with the Primal Rage looking for that, but they're still getting picked. Great follow-up on Huss to take him out of the air. You could tell he was fishing for that Dragon Blade. And Ardeont, even though they lose DM to that Primal Rage, they didn't need to commit anything of their own to ultimately win that skirmish.
If you're a Fisherman, Tide's going out right now, 1 minute and 5 seconds remaining, and Huss has got this Dragon Blade, but can he pull the trigger here, or is Jeff going to shut him down again? This is now a very difficult place for Ardeont to be in. One good EMP can once again just stop Blank, and they don't have double support ultimates this time. Even when they did, it wasn't enough to get Blank across the board.
That's a huge commit. Again, right in that key moment of when Blank are trying to set up and already picking them apart now, looking for a gong if they can. The rest of Blank will just be able to retreat the spawn. Unless RQT goes down late, that's a big stagger kill now in favor of Ardeont. My goodness, they get Huss as well. This is huge. Blank only have 1 fight left now.
They may not even cap A if they're not careful about this. What you can expect from Blank is double support ultimates. Finally, they're going to be able to match Animo and even some more. This time around, most importantly, you can expect Blank to not layer support ultimates because there is no fear of EMP, but only if Blank can pull the trigger quickly here. They're not waiting on the cart. they're just waiting on themselves.
It's the same thing that Ardeont did to them on Dorado. They didn't even cap the first point. They are about to receive a taste of their own medicine of what they did to AHQ. If they can't get a leg up in this fight, Michelle self-destructs the mech there to preserve it and catches Trill in the blast. Already off to a good start. Huss needs to get a lot more than just the one, but he can't quite get Erster, who's starting to swing back. They get the other kills on the rest of the fight though, thanks to the self-destruct and even a few shots from Gunva. They have got the payload underway, but they still need to deal with Erster. This is how Ardeont turn things around. They keep members alive, they keep contests in, but Erster does go down. EMP does get committed, but Jeff will die anyway, and maybe, just maybe, the cap will go through here. But Ardeont, they're still not done. They're never done. The sound barrier in as they pick off Gunva now. They do lose Republic, but they've still got legs in this fight. They're just waiting for Erster to rejoin as well. But Blank, they have finally found it in themselves to pick off these members who are desperately trying to stall, and it doesn't look like Ardeont are quite going to get the last hold that they were looking for. That's Death Blossom. Never mind that. My goodness, Erster! Has he just done it for his team? Has he single-handedly punched their tickets to the finals? Yes, he has. Blank will not get a chance to re-challenge anyone in that grand finals. They will not be able to repeat their season 1 performance, but Ardeont will keep the dream going. They have now made it to the grand finals, having gone undefeated in that regular season.
And you talk about down but not out, but I feel like that describes Ardeont a lot better than it describes Blank in this scenario. Ardeont, even when they look like they're about to drop the cap, they're about to drop the fight, they never really do, and Blank cannot get across the line, even when they're the most favored, even when Ardeont are at their pure weakest. Something comes around, whether it's a self-destruct from Michelle, whether it's a Death Blossom by Ursa, that completely takes Blank by surprise, and that is why now Ardeont move on, and Blank will go forth to Sunday in the 3rd to 4th place match.
And against the team that in the regular season made them sweat the hardest, made them lose the most sleep, Ardeont pull out a dominant display in the semi-finals here today. 4-0, an absolute shutout against the members of Blank Esports, to realize what they have worked for the whole season long. They finally have made it. They finally have their shot at the trophy.
And with that trophy in the foreground as well, Ardeont are one bow closer to claiming that trophy and getting their hands on it to take it home to Korea, if you will, because right now they look like a team that absolutely do deserve it. And for Blank, unfortunately, while their journey does not end here, their journey to making the grand finals does.
They do, of course, get to play in that 3rd, 4th place match against the loser of Hong Kong Attitude, Flash Wolves. But it means that their best result for Season 2 would be 3rd place. That would still be 1 place below their Season 1 finish. But at any rate, let's go ahead, take a look at how that Route 66 played out.
So the thing to take note here is the difference in terms of EMP charge rate between Huss and Jeff on both teams' respective defenses. So Blank need to get a little bit aggressive here to really take use of the health pack, to really take use of building that quick EMP, because so far they're a little bit behind. Note the free push from Ardeont up until this point. This is when Blank actually stopped the cart for the first time.
And I want to highlight Erster's positioning in here as well, because what you see is how separated these members are. If I'm not mistaken, he's about to get a headshot onto AEUR, but you even see where he is on the ground is safe because Blank aren't on Big Earls, they're behind it. AEUR is moving in for the cart. He can't get far enough to contest Erster. He may be on the ground, he may not have high ground, but he's uncontested. And that means that Ardeont are able to apply this pressure here as Blank move in with all the body shots he was landing. As much as the kill credit is on all these other members of the team, a lot of it is the damage is being done by that kind of open sightline from the Widowmaker. They get the last few kills, get the cart underway, and instantly, by the way, you see Erster even checks his back flank, then he starts moving up onto the high ground position, which they do now have. They constantly made sure Erster had ideal sightlines across the whole fight.
And that's good team play from the DPS combo, right? Because at the start of this, we said, look, Erster #1 DPS of OPC Season 2 going into this playoffs. DM from the bit of a joke play from Animo, DM equals noob. But actually, you know, the fact that the thing that we saw there was
no noob.
Not only just that, but the fact that they were able to take advantage of each other's plays so well. Ursa pumping up the damage, DM cleaning it up, just getting racking up a lot of kills on the initial offense. And one of the most important ones was actually onto Huss to prevent him from getting that EMP in that A fight. So it had to be a fight that Blank give up. They didn't even have enough DPS to start with. Edup's their only DPS when Huss is out the picture, and Huss is playing DPS on a Sombra anyway, which is a little bit different to what Ardeont were doing with Jeff on the Sombra.
Yeah, and also interesting to see that it was Huss on the Sombra and not Gunba, but at any rate, that aside, like what you touched on there with Ursta and DM, I mean, we've talked about it a bit over the regular season, the kind of 2 DPS plus the Winston combo. That's what they do a lot of. It's kind of like an alley-oop. One throws it up in the air so the other can slam dunk it, and you got to say, Ardeont are the best team at doing that.
Multiple slam dunks so far, and they don't look to be finished with that just yet. Now look at the play from Ursa here. Big one onto Gumba that shuts him down. It's the moment that I'm thinking of. If not, then it's actually a totally different one.
This is the fight even after that. So that's after they've already got a significant win. This time it's the headshot on Eat You Up. And you've got to commend Blank at least for looking for Ursa here. But again, they just kind of start from the back foot anyway. They kind of struggle to get a good position in the fight. All the lines are covered from Ardeont. With Ursa exerting that pressure, it's actually hard for you to get that setup. And again, it's during that setup moment where you're not ready to fight yet, but you're in too deep to pull out, that Ardeont always press the go button.
And this is that final fight before Ardeont actually get that second cap. So this was the final opportunity for Blank to prevent the B cap from going over, and they had the tools to do it because the EMP was still in play. They needed to use it there. And you actually see the headshot onto Huss as well because of indecisiveness. It's not just Huss, it's indecisiveness from Blank because they didn't know if they were going to go for the play. Is this where we're going to make the defense or not? And they couldn't make that choice, and where you're in that sort of limbo zone, the setup phase, which Blank have fallen into the trap of so many times. Other teams like Ardeont, their setup phase is very quick. They're like, the setup is, what's the situation? Cool, make this play. Blank is, what's the situation? Oh, we're dead.
Yeah, and look, that's already your most vulnerable moment. It is also the exact moment Ardeont will always press the go button. That is the one moment you can't afford to hesitate. I mean, really, you shouldn't hesitate at all during Overwatch, right? It's a fast-paced game. That's just the nature of the beast. But it is that extra moment of hesitation that's been spelling disaster for Blank. And you've got to say the counterpoint to that is when we've seen Blank without hesitation, like on that very first map of Lijiang Tower, and indeed even at moments on the other parts of Lijiang Tower and King's Row that followed it, when they didn't have that indecisiveness, the only thing that was selling them short sometimes was the execution, but you would rather be in that position.
Yeah, and of course, one of the situations where they were most clearly, quite decisive was Temple Numis when they actually brought it around in the final couple of fights. Speaking of final couple of fights, this is the final moment for Ardeont to get it over the line. They eventually do at the 45-second mark, so what you can really give to Blank here is your ability to stall out for over 1 minute to prevent this cap from going.
The unfortunate thing, though, is there's this really staggered thing here, not just in the deaths, but also in the ultimates. They'd committed the EMP the fight before this. Huss changed, but it's one of those chicken and egg, right? Did he change because he used the EMP, or did he use the EMP because he wanted to change? Probably a bit of both. But Gunba dies with the ultimate, Eat You Up dies with the ultimate, Shrill committed the ultimate, and then died. And you see them coming out the gate now. They have to commit some to keep the fight alive, but it's the situation of what exactly are you keeping it alive for? Unless you're getting counter kills, you're not keeping it alive for anything. The self-destruct from Huwu isn't an ultimate that you can reliably get 2, 3, 4 kills off, even for Huwu, right? The Pulse Bomb is the same story. So maybe if they preserved the Primal Rage from Trill, that would have been an in for them. And you've got to counterpoint that to what Ardeont do in the same situation. And in a sense here, they are in the same situation because every death Ardeont take counts for almost double the deaths that Blank take because their respawn's so much further. But they're always cycling ultimates for maximum efficiency. It's not just let's use this ultimate to get kills. The secondary goal of every single ultimate usage from Ardeont is, and also get our next ultimates ready.
So the thing to take note in that fight was the fact that because DM killed himself to his own Pulse Bomb, A, that he used the Pulse Bomb, got nothing out of it, and B, that he went down because of it. That's a big window of opportunity for Blank. One ultimate's off the table, one player is off the table. A player like DM, which has done a great job so far in the series, it's a 6 versus 5. You could see the respect being given there by Ardeont, which is not always the case, and it's kind of reflected in that final fight on Ardeont's own, I believe it was their defense, and we might be able to get to see that later, but the fact that Ardeont pulled back, you saw the positioning shifted, they said, okay, we'll give you the cart for now, as we sort of just wait to recuperate.
Yeah.
Jeff got himself a double kill in that in that same phase, and then Ardeont put their foot back on the pedal and completed that journey on the C cap.
And the thing as well, to kind of tie up what I was talking about a moment ago in a bundle, and we'll also get to see it on this defense here. Ardeont, when they do finally have no ultimates left, they've at least set themselves up such that that last ultimate they use, either it's going to be successful and it's going to turn the fight on its head and close it out, or it's not, and they're going to lose that one cap, and then they've still got heaps of map left. And this is exactly what happens. Erster was on the wrong side of this fight. EduUp died to his own pulse bomb, which demeched Michelle. If he hadn't died, that would have been a flat advantage for Blank, but he does. The sound barriers get matched. The Transcendence had to be overlapped, like you said, because of the EMP, but now both those ultimates are out. Jeff is in position for the EMP, and if you look at the setup here, Erster died, he's on his way back to the fight here. The EMP comes out, they instantly convert, and it's the ultimate from Erster that eventually pulls it back in this particular moment.
Yeah, and twice in a row as well, because Erster got his second Death Blossom a little bit later on during the overtime, which is what was one of the tools that Ardeont used to win against Blank on that defense, what was so successful about it. But you know, the micro things in there really does add up. Like very small decisions, very small situations kind of add up into one big result, which was the fact that, look, EduUp went 1 for 1 on his pulse bomb. That's better than what DM did on the C attack.
Sure.
So that's something you can rely on. If you're going to do anything, the minimum is going 1 for 1. What you can expect there is to say, okay, EduUp killed Michelle, but Michelle killed EduUp for all intents and purposes. Yeah. That's what happened. That's still a 5 versus 5. But the micro play for the fact that the double support ultimates got layered due to the fear of Jeff coming in, that would have been fine if Jeff used the EMP, but because Jeff was patient, because Jeff just threatened to use EMP, got Gumber a little scared, made him pull the trigger early, and then save the EMP for a later fight, that gave Ardeont such a big advantage.
And that's because Blank knew that they had to kind of pile into the situation. There was no holding back and waiting out the EMP, because what that would have actually just done is given Ardeont plenty of time to regroup.
It feels like a lose-lose.
Yeah, exactly. Blank needed to get aggressive. They needed to go, which meant risking playing into the EMP. And that's the thing. Like you said, it's lose-lose. There's almost no right answer in that situation. You don't layer those ultimates. Jeff sees that opportunity, commits the EMP then. You don't get the Transcendence. And then you're sitting there like, man, why didn't I commit that Transcendence? You commit it early, Jeff can just wait it out. The only way you actually win that is you commit both those ultimates and you convert specifically onto Jeff, as well as anyone else who may just kill you, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, Gumber would have been charging up his fireball there, sees Jeff and just takes him out. In an ideal world. Exactly. But actually, in a more realistic scenario, it would be a case of Gumber, you know, and nothing to fault Gumber here because he made the right play. Yes. You know, if we talk about orthodox Overwatch gameplay here, he made 100% the right play, but Jeff's timing was a little bit better. He saw the play and said, okay, I'm going to save this. If Jeff had used the EMP, different scenario, and that wasn't even what really swung the fight. That was sort of a stepping stone for Ardeont, because actually, you know, they were able to overpower Blank anyway, and the Death Blossom just secured it.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Again, you got to go back to that ability that Ardeont has to fight and kind of skirmish without fully committing to the fight, but also without losing members. And that's the thing. It was during that window that Blank were running those ultimates that actually Ardeont were technically at their most vulnerable. So Jeff did the smart thing and positioned really, really safely. The trade-off, though, is if you're positioned really, really safely, you're actually not in the fight. That's technically still a numbers advantage for Blank, but it's the skill of Ardeont that they're constantly able to just hold the other team, kind of go even with them for long enough to get it back into their favor, either positionally or in terms of ultimates or whatever it is that they can use to close out the fight. They go in with the EMP so that they can go in with the Death Blossom, these members that they have kept alive, the potential win conditions they have preserved, which they then capitalize on.
Yeah, it feels like, you know, a cat in a ball of string, right? It's Ardeont just barely keeping Blank there. You're not really out of the fight. Yeah. You're not necessarily really in the fight, but when you are in the fight, you're really in it. Look, Ardeont have moments where they just have crazy moments when you think they lose, and that was kind of like right at the end of the final play, which sealed it. And Erster came in after what was looking like a losing fight and cleaned up, and that is why now we're at a 4-0 scenario where Blank, unfortunately, do not repeat their performance in the previous matchup between them and Ardeont get a full clean sweep.
And that is how Ardeont are going to be shaped up as they move on towards the finals. Player of the game going to go over to Erster on the Tracer, which is an interesting one. Normally it's DM on the Tracer, but that's the thing. They were even able to put Erster on it, and I think you said it pretty perfectly when it happened. It was so good, you could be fooled into thinking it was DM.
It's pretty accurate, to be honest. It's in a scenario where, you know, I had to do a double take. It's like, wait, is that not
hold on.
DM?
I
thought that was DM.
To come clean, like, I did exactly the same. Like, I'm in no position to call you out on that, but at any rate, it is off the back of things like that. The strong tracer play out of Erster, good enough to mistake him for DM, and just the amazing performance out of this team, not just today, but in the regular season to get them to this position. They were already the most threatening team coming into playoffs. Now with a 4-0 sweep against Blank, they are also, regardless as to what happens tomorrow, the most threatening team coming into the finals.
Yeah, that's going to be difficult for whatever team moves on. But speaking of whatever team moves on, it's Flash Wolves and Hong Kong Attitude in tomorrow's best of 7 matchup. And look, that one has some surprises as well. Of course, the loser of that match will go on to face Blank. And regardless of what happens here, Blank get an opportunity to get revenge on one of these two teams. Either Flash Wolves for beating them twice in the regular season in Season 2, and also for winning Season 1 and taking that first place against Blank, putting Blank in number 2, or against Hong Kong Attitude, who Blank are currently on a losing streak to anyway, sort of starting back from Season 1. They had a 1 loss in Season 1 in the final round robin, and then twice now moving into the season. But let's go ahead and meet the winner of today's match. It's going to be Animo.
到了总决赛，在我身旁呢，要来访问到是Animo选手。
안녕하세요. 저는 아디언트 팀의 메인 힐러와 팀장을 맡고 있는 아나모입니다.
大家好，我是
Says hello, I'm Animo's main healer, Animo.
那今天我们知道 Ardeont 是以4比0击败 Blank Esports， 看起来打起来好像都还蛮轻松，而且又维持了那个不败金身的姿态。跟大家分享一下跟例行赛的时候比赛心情有什么差别。
So can you share with us sort of how your mentality is and how you guys in terms of play style, how you were feeling in general?
네, 블리자드 여기 경기장이 좀 바뀐 것 같아서 신기했고 그리고 관중들도 많이 오셔가지고 조금 긴장됐어요.
他说就是因为这里暴雪的那个管地就是管场地就是有点变，就是变得比较漂亮，然后他觉得很神奇，然后就是而且今天来的观众也很多，而且他觉得就是很紧张。
And there was a lot of people here watching as well that made me a bit nervous actually.
比较没有空来到我们现场看比赛，但是呢，因为是连假假期，大家都来到现场买票进场，
So
来帮他们
we had a lot of ticket sales here. We had a lot of people come and watch. So I can understand there probably is a bit of pressure on the players with all the big crowd and being in the environment of the playoffs.
네, 네, 약간 평소랑 다르게.
아니 그 사람이 많아서 긴장한 거지. 그리고 긴장했는데 좀 뭔가 보여준 것 같아서 기뻐요 사람들한테.
他说压力是还好，但是他觉得就是
I'm not too pressured.
因为大家都来这里看，然后他觉得就是为了要给大家就是看更好更。
I want to give a good performance for all the people watching. So if there's any pressure, there's pressure to put on a really good show.
来到我们例行赛现场观看过的那个朋友们都知道呢，其实 Ardeont 在比赛到后段的时候，接近要胜利的时候，他们都会唱出自己。
So if you know Ardeont, you've seen them play before. They like to relax by singing and doing other things and breaks.
아디언트 약간 거의 경기 끝나기 전에 약간 기분이 좋아서 그래서 노래 항상 하시는데요. 혹시 오늘도 한 곡 좀 불러주시나요?
빅뱅 노래.
他说他要唱 Big Bang 的歌曲。
So I like songs from the group Big Bang from Korea.
난 너를 사랑해. 이 세상은 너뿐이야. 소리쳐 부르지만 저 대답 없는 노을만 붉게 타는데
谢谢阿纳莫用他美妙的歌声为我们季后赛的第一天赛事画下了最完美的句点。那接下来呢，我们的
Thank you, Animo, for helping us celebrate here with that song and also now their victory moving on to the finals. So make sure you stay tuned to find out exactly who will be joining them in the finals because day 2 of the playoffs does continue, and of course that was mentioned previously. It was between Flash Wolves and Hong Kong Attitude. So that's still going to be a really interesting one. Yeah.
Just by the way, Animo, man of many talents. Here's the thing, Ardeont have secured their spot in the finals now. Their dominance has continued thus far. The question for the finals on Sunday will be, does their dominance continue to have them becoming the champions of Season 2, or will they just barely fall short of the mark? That's going to be the question hanging over this team, but for now, they have made it. They've made it that far at least, and they do so now with the advantage of getting to watch tomorrow's match. Both Hong Kong Attitude and Flash Wolves, whoever it is that Ardeont will meet in the finals, they will be prepared.
And of course for Flash Wolves and Hong Kong Attitude as well, they would have definitely paid attention to this matchup, not just for Ardeont, but also for Blank Esports, because the loser once again has to face them in the first matchup on Sunday, the 3rd and 4th place match, to determine who will come home as the bronze medalist of the OPC. But with that now, OPC playoff Season 2 playoffs day 1 has wrapped up the first semi-final out of the way. Once again, Ardeont now taking that one 4-0, moving into the grand finals. And tomorrow, Flash Wolves and Hong Kong Attitude in the second semi-final to see who will meet them there. I've been Kevin Walker. Joining with me this evening is Matt Pixie Carroll, and we'll see you both tomorrow for OPC Season 2.